especially in the mountains. So and we have some good initial interest in those. So we'll hopefully by Thanksgiving or Christmas have those open and ready to go.
We wish you luck, and if you can control the snow, then you're more powerful than...
Well, we don't want to control it, we just want to manage it. We'd hate to put the nix on a lot of big snow, so we'll just manage that big snow on our little site, so. Thank you.
Danish, could I ask a
Nancy.
question of Peter?
Yes.
Peter, I'm Nancy Trevette, I'm a Westside homeowner.
Yes.
I just have a general question. Are you the project manager?
I am, we have a potpourri of project management. We have construction, we have infrastructure, we have entitlements. I'm the coordinator, and so Nate Whaley is probably from our company the project manager, especially for all the infrastructure work that goes on.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Anybody else have any comments or questions they'd like to make? Hearing none, we'll move to item number 5, which is consent agenda. And the question is whether anybody has any corrections to the consent agenda or calendar. And for the Brown Act, the consent agenda consists of 6 items: minutes from the June 14th meeting, acceptance of improvements for utility infrastructure related to the Recreation Complex Phase 2, bad debt write-offs totaling $2,000 for 3 accounts, electric rate adjustment for, revenue that we didn't bill, which we discussed at the last meeting, consent for claims and receivable shut-off. Does anybody have any corrections? General, Michael?
Yeah, for the correction to the agenda, I'd like to defer on item 8H, the review and revision to policy statement number 620. I'd like to defer to the next meeting. We've had additional comments from council that staff needs to review.
Any other corrections or consent, the agenda or consent calendar? So at this point, we'll move to item 6, which is, would somebody like to make a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
I'd like to move, this is Rick, move that we adopt the consent calendar.
Dornbrook will second that.
All in favor? Bob Endy?
Endy, aye.
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Epstein, aye.
So we have no consent items brought forward for separate discussion or action. We'll move to item 8, new and unfinished business and action items. A is discussion and possible action regarding the design timeline, bidding process, costs, construction activities associated with the Out Valley Power Line project. Michelle won't be with us, so it's all you, Michael.
Good morning. The Out Valley update will cover many items this month, starting with the construction update. We will then discuss owner furnished material, O&M after the completion of the project. Out Valley financials will be next with the PG&E update. Overall Out Valley costs and risks, current risks associated, and the B8 drawdown schedule. Next, the board will consider the approval of various change orders that will come before the board. So to get straight into the as has been reported, as far as the underground, as has been reported, the trenching is now complete, and we are into the cable pulling is in process. This is going well and should be complete next week. The fiber is also being pulled, and that's a separate crew that's pulling the fiber, and they'll be done shortly after the cable pull. The underground will be paving operations by the end of next week. This will include the mill and overlay of sections of Highway 88 between here and Silver Lake, There'll also be chip sealing that will be done. There's a private property near Tragedy Springs that we've agreed to chip seal their drive that we went through, and also some work on Bear River Road still needs to be done. Q&D is also working on the final restoration items, including the final grading of any of the disturbed areas, seeding or hydro-seeding those areas, cabinet screening, which is placing big rocks and logs in front of the cabinets, and other miscellaneous items. We're also looking at the cabinets. There's one that you might have noticed past Tragedy Springs. It kind of sits up there. I think you all noticed it. That might have not only boulders in front of it, but also bollards to protect it from possible paving operations. But we'll get into bollards a little bit later on. The underground portion of the project is on schedule and will be completed on time. Is there any questions on the underground portion?
I think that last sentence is worth repeating.
Overhead. All poles have been transported into place. They've been assembled, and I'm very happy to announce that all 61 poles are now standing, even the one that's behind me. So we have 61 poles in the air. This has been accomplished prior to when we would have originally even begun the 34.5 line. August 15th would be at the next meeting. I would say that we just started on the 34K and we're confident that we'll be done. And I don't have to say that. I can say that the 34K line is the poles are up. All of the direct bed foundations have been poured. So not only are they standing, but the concrete is done. The distribution line is being strung by hand. So the 12 kV distribution line will not be pulled by helicopter. It's actually being pulled by hand. The 34 kV sock line, remember they pull a sock line first, which is just a very thin, and then they come in with a larger rope, and then they pull in the actual cable. The sock line is also being run by hand. The final clearance will be from August 19th through the 24th, when Wilson will actually string the 34.5 kV line and complete the final tap pole at Bear River Reservoir. They'll also complete all the cutovers to the 12 kV. They will also begin the wreck out of the existing 12 kV line, and some of those poles will actually be flown out. All of the old material from the 12 kV goes into a specific area, a disposal area that PG&E specifies. They have creosote on them. It is a capital product of PG&E, so they specify how it's disposed of. By the end of the clearance, the new 12 kV line will be in operation, and actually the Boy Scout camp and the shack over there on Bear River Reservoir and all the cabin owners will have their power fed through the new 12 kV line, so it'll be hot on our poles. The current schedule is to energize the 115 line by late September, so we'll be hot all the way up from Salt Springs to Camp Green, and as I said, the 12 kV will be hot all the way to Bear River Reservoir. The 34 kV line will go hot in early October, the underground also going hot, and then we'll actually go live on November 1st. So first we have to turn things on and test things, because I would hate to come to you on November 3rd and say, well, we flipped it on, but it didn't actually work. So we go hot, we test everything and make sure that it's actually working.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, little things. The overhead portion of the line is way ahead of schedule. Is there any questions on the overhead?
Congratulations, that's great.
This is a picture of one of the construction workers we found out there without wearing a hard hat. we have made safety arrangement to get a hard hat to this individual. So we just want to make sure you know that we're following safety rules. A lot of progress has been made at the Cam Green, which is not depicted in this picture. All of the anchor bolts have been set. All the foundations have been poured. The transformer has arrived and has been set. I think it was pretty interesting to look at that first picture that looks like dirt, and then as we go, as well has been the breakers and the relays. All substation equipment has arrived and is now in the process of being installed. This includes the steel, which has gone up, and this is a shot of the 34 kV steel and the pole number 1. And you can see that pole. This is where it exits the substation into the first pole of the 34K line. So the steel is in, and the actual lines that go into the substation have been set. So the line from pole number, or this square substation, to pole number 1 has actually been run now. Here's a shot of the 115 steel and pole number 1/21, which you can see in the distance back there. Maybe not in this shot, but anyway, 1/21 is where it actually enters the substation. The control building has also arrived and has been set. PG&E is scheduled to complete their work in the control building beginning on Monday. They've also let us know that they are on track to do all the work at Tiger Springs and Salt Springs at those 2 substations as well. The Cam Green fence will be going up in a couple of weeks. This is a 14-foot fence with 3 lines of barbed wire on top of it. It will have a sliding gate for vehicle access, and it'll have a man gate for just regular inspections. We've asked that the contractor give us a bid for a bottom rail to be installed. You probably know how fences are constructed. They have the rails here, and then usually a middle rail and then a top rail. But in snow country, it's really good to have the support at the bottom, because if you do have snow creep, you're going to get it at the bottom and they start pushing out. You'll notice that most of the chain link fences in Kirkwood are removed in the winters. So a bottom rail will help us to maintain that fence. Along with our visual inspections, we may have to do some snow removal, but we'll probably park a a walk behind snow thrower down there. Progress continues at Cam Green with the transformer in place. The reactor has been installed in the dirt room, which has a lot less room right now. If you take a look at it, it looks like we designed this perfect.
Right, we did, of course.
Yeah, it was all planned.
Right.
And as well as the switchgear, which is on the left-hand side there. Emerson Electric is on site testing the components installed. So they're testing the components as they're being installed, and they're also on site for the underground, and they're testing the lines that are being cable pulled as they're being pulled. So we're trying to stay on top of the testing so this doesn't all happen at the last minute. So if there is an issue of it with anything, we know it way in advance.
That's a different electrical contractor than it's actually pulling the cable?
Yes.
That's Triton, right?
Right. So this is an outside third-party tester that we use to come in and do the all the testing of the equipment, so that they work for us and they can tell us if everything is working correctly. The substation portion of the project is on schedule, and we are on track for a November 1st energization. So that completes the construction update, if there's any questions.
Any questions from the board? Bob Indy?
Michael, on access, so the main gate going into the enclosure, you have to dig this thing out if there's a lot of snow on the ground before you can get in? Is that what your plan is?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and we anticipate
So
that.
Okay, so the gates swing outwards, of course, main gate. What's the vehicle gate? What is that, a sliding?
Yeah, that's sliding. We're looking for a proposal to actually install a split gate at that location so that you could access it. There'd be, it's a sliding gate, but having two sections that you could slide the first top section and then slide the bottom section, because you might not need to slide the bottom section. But I'm not real positive of that because you can always get in through the man gate. Why would you need, if you're gonna drive over you're gonna have to dig out the whole thing anyway, so. There will be a snow removal aspect to the CAM grade, it's just, there's nothing we can do unless we put it in a building. It's gonna need snow removal so we can get to it, get to the control building, et cetera.
Eric,
Yep,
you have a comment?
got it. Thanks.
Assuming that November 1 is the real date, and I think it is, and congratulations on that as well. It might be nice to plan some sort of a thank you event for the main contractors and engineers and so on who have made it possible to finish this project on time.
Great.
So,
And we'll be actually discussing that during the manager's report.
okay.
Any comments or questions from the audience? Congratulations, Michael, thank you. So we're moving on to 8A2 and 3, I guess?
Yes, so I'll take those together actually, because a month ago, the board asked me what were my biggest concerns were, and I had to say that owner furnished material, the receiving of owner furnished material was one of my biggest concerns, because you have to have the equipment in stock to put it in place, and you could definitely have a major delay if you didn't receive something. I'm pleased to announce that all owner furnished material has arrived. So we just have to put it together. But, so that actually will come off of the agenda because it's all here. Operations and maintenance, the district staff continues to work on the specifics of the operation and maintenance aspects of the Out Valley line. Recently, we sent 6 staff members and toured the line with the expedential inspector to become familiar with the layout. Areas that were to be, concentrated on the layout, the accessibility areas to park to gain access. We have to get to every sectionalizing cabinet, so it's important to be able to know, especially in the 7-mile section between Peddler Hill and Bear River Resort, it's all Forest Service land, and we have to be able to know how to access that without it just walking 22 miles. There's got to be good access points. And then along with that, how do we get to those sectionalizing cabinets? Do we use, snowshoes? Do we walk? Do we have a vehicle? Snow pole markings. Each sectionalizing cabinet will need to be marked because some of these areas are frequented by snowmobiles. So we're going to go with our, we mark to the outside of what you want to protect. So if you want to protect something, you put this snow stake here. So we're going to go to the front 2 corners, and we're actually going to have the electrician mark them so we don't put a snow stake through our brand new electrical line. We think about this stuff, it's crazy. And so we'll have snow stakes and there'll be exactly the same type of snow stakes that you see throughout our valley. There'll be the U-channel with the 2-inch Schedule 80 gray electrical pipes on top with red reflective tape showing that it is an electrical installation. And then, monthly we'll be walking this line or snowmobiling or however we access it to ensure that snowmobiles haven't clipped anything, probably push the snow off the top of the sectionalizing cabinets, maybe move it out from the front of it and just try to keep it maintained as far as snow removal and just see if there's any damage. This is going to be visual. We won't be actually opening up anything, just a visual inspection. Same thing with the Out Valley line, just a walk through, see if there's any leaning trees, see if anything looks like it's, not right. If we saw something not right, then we would contact the people that, the linemen and such, that we contacted with Wilson Construction and Titan Electric to actually come out and take a look. So GPS devices to put a GPS marking on all sectionalizing cabinet, but more important, vaults. We need to have a good location of where the vaults are, because of course we won't know unless we have those. Locators, so that we can find the line under snow, just in case we have a problem with the direct bury section. We need to be able to locate that line. We have wire that goes through, so we energize the wire. If there is no power going through the transmission line, you actually energize the test wire that you have, and you can track that to see exactly where. And hopefully it's something, that at least will give you an indication of where it is. And then there's a thumper machine that actually will tell you where a fault has occurred in the line itself. So we've looked at a lot of different ideas as far as transportation. This is the piston pulley that we talked about. There's another one that has, this cat has a dozing blade, which might be able to be used in snow removal operations. We brought it up. This is the Tucker. This has rubber cleats, which would avoid damaging asphalt areas, which is a real concern if you looked at the roads around Kirkwood, wherever they run the cats, it has damage. This is an interesting vehicle. This is called a UTV rather than an ATV. This utility all-terrain vehicle or terrain vehicle can be equipped with tires for the summer usage. So this could be used in the winter and then possibly in the summer as well. Obviously, we don't know which direction we're going at this point, or if we'll do anything before this winter besides snowshoes and rent snowmobiles. I don't know exactly what we'll do as far as transportation for the first winter, but we're continuing to do our research and we'll come back to the board. Is there any questions on operations and maintenance?
Just to confirm, we've secured, or we will secure a contract, I guess it's with Wilson, initially to be our maintenance contractor or repair contractor for the high voltage lines.
Yeah, Wilson for that, and then Titan Electric for the underground.
Okay.
And both of those will probably be a time and material contract, and possibly retained. But we're working with both those companies.
Nancy, Trevette?
So I actually have 3 questions, and I don't know whether this is premature to ask these or not. Has there been any consideration given to any kind of security cameras out there? Is one. Second is, when you send staff out there, what's the minimum number in the event of an emergency? And thirdly, I'm looking at Rick, is there any consideration for sending the fire department out there to train them in the event of a staff emergency?
Excellent questions. I'll take all 3 if
That's great.
excellent questions, and there will be cameras at KM Green hooked into our security system that we already have. We actually have cameras that are throughout the district now that we can use. So there'll be cameras there, and there'll be motion sensor cameras so that they won't tape all the time, just when something actually moves. 2 people will be the minimum that we send out. Just for safety reasons, we always will have 2. And Rick Ansel was actually part of that 6-member crew that went out and surveyed the areas for fire safety. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all.
Just that the area for KM Green is, as you know, in U.S. Forest Service land, and the response for fire EMS would come from Amador Fire Protection District, U.S. Forest Service, and CAL FIRE if they're in area. So it would be a normal 911 call. Kirkwood Fire per se would not respond. Obviously, it would be a 44-minute ETA in the summertime. But it has been addressed. And when we were touring the site on Thursday, they actually had U.S. Forest Service out there doing some fuel reduction work in the area. So it's a pretty busy, active area, especially in the summer for U.S. Forest Service as well as some of the forest rangers, law enforcement rangers up in that area just to monitor and patrol. what's going on down there.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask just one follow-up question regarding the minimum would be 2 people being going out at a time. So is there some way for, I'm a thinker, think, oh, the worst. I always think the worst. So, in the event of 2 snowmobiles roll over, I mean, and, you've got one snowmobile out there, it rolls over, both people are hurt. How do you know that from a safety standpoint, that there's not a problem going on out there?
Well, one of the things that we're looking at is the satellite phone,
Oh,
so
okay.
that we would have communications all the way from here to the Cam Green. And the second is protocols as far as how long have they been out, whether we should send out additional resources, almost like you're entering a fire,
Right.
you have 2 people outside and 1 inside. So,
Right. Okay.
we'd have protocols as far as how long until we heard back from them. But I think a satellite phone is a must, just in case you don't want to be, an hour away from communications if you have an issue out there.
Right.
Whether it be personnel or an equipment issue, you need to, be pretty quick to be able to call the office and you can provide additional resources.
Great, thank you.
Good questions, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience or the board? So we'll move on to 8B. Continued discussion and possible action regarding the current PG&E cost estimate and impacts to the overall finances and drawdown schedule in relation to the district's Out Valley Power Line project. Michael?
District staff and President O'Grady and Director Heinz Epstein has continued to negotiate with PG&E over the ownership of the 115 line, cost overruns, and other issues. The new point of demarcation is depicted on this slide, and it's in between poles 1 and 2. Is our actual right off of pole number 1. A recent wrinkle is that PG&E has asked the district to conform to the standards set forth in the Transmission Interconnection Handbook, which requires that the owner of a transmission line own the automatic fault detection equipment, and that this equipment is located as close as possible to the point of demarcation. So that was a big, long sentence. So what they're looking for is that the owner of the 115 line, which is the district, own the protection equipment associated with that line, and that equipment be located right close to the point where we change ownership. So I don't know if there's any questions. We are researching several different options at this point with varying price tags. We have agreed with PG&E to conform with the requirements of the TIH, the Transmission Interconnection Handbook, within a reasonable amount of time, 1 to 2 years, or longer if we receive regulatory or environmental delays. We are also working with PG&E on the final cost of ownership calculations. So they need to divide up the cost of that pole number 1, because they'll own pole number 1 and we'll own the balance. They need to divide that out of the cost that it cost them to put in the first 3 poles.
Well, Michael, from my earlier discussion with you about this matter, I had the sense that that requirement is kind of a deal killer, that the cost of conforming is A, not necessary, it's just checking off a box on a piece of paper, and B, very, very expensive. And so that, it's more than a wrinkle, right? Or is there new information that says it's not such a big deal as long as we have a couple of years to do it?
I guess it's your description of a wrinkle, but yeah, this is a serious item. If we have to put in a circuit breaker, it is like putting in what you could call a mini substation. It's called a switch station, and it would have a similar, it would look similar to a substation, with the 115 actually coming down into a much smaller, apparatus, but it would have a building, it would have a battery bank, it would have relays, and it would have a circuit breaker. We're also, in the interconnection agreement, we're putting in language that we would conform to the transmission interconnection handbook, but not the specific method, so that we can look at different areas that might be pole mounted. A pole mounted solution that we're researching is a load break, automatic load break switch, which would automatically break if there was a fault on the line, given the same protection as a circuit breaker.
But I mean, I thought that that piece of equipment actually already exists.
Well, it does, but it exists at KM Green. So the point here is that the way the system is designed, it's a three location protection device, one at KM Green, one at Tiger Creek, and one at Salt Springs, but it's all owned and controlled by PG&E. The difference here is that this handbook and the checking of the boxes that you mentioned is that we would need to own that protection device, and it would have to be located at the point that the ownership changes.
So it becomes a redundant piece of equipment.
Yes, and equipment at KM Green might be able to be used at this new station if we need to be doing that, like the relays, etc. But when this TIH is conformed with, PG&E will no longer need to have any access to KM Green. So their access, their control of relays, etc., will go away. They won't have anything to do with the 115 line from Salt Springs to KM Green. Their protection relays will only be between Tiger Creek and Salt Springs.
Would that mean that what they own, what they are going to own at KM Green, they would no longer own, and so we wouldn't have to pay that tax?
Exactly.
The O&M on those?
Exactly.
So that's an offsetting cost then?
Yeah, it's not a huge cost. You know, we estimated that the cost of the equipment that they'll own at KM Green is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's not absolutely
And
huge.
what's the range of the cost of these solutions that we're talking about? I mean, what are we talking about in terms of
Well,
cost?
if we're talking about an automatic load vacuum breaker, it's about $100,000. If we're talking about a switch station, the district hasn't procured an estimate. Dave Riley off the top of his head has estimated upwards to $1 million. PG&E gave us a figure of $2 million.
So we're not going to do that?
I don't know.
Well, the point is, even if we did that, it's cheaper than the alternative.
Which is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous solution.
We know that, and we're working to do the less expensive load break switch for less than $100,000, which resides on top of an existing pole.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really ironic, we have to build a mini substation right in the place where we wanted to build a substation in the first place, and they said no.
Yes, but we're not trying to maximize irony.
There's
But
no
we're
way,
doing a pretty good job.
Without trying.
there's no way we could put the substation in the building instead of the pole one. I mean, is that totally off the table? I mean, I know they said that to begin with, but could we review that option possibly?
Could you
Instead of building this mini substation circuit breaker at pole number 1, couldn't you do it in their building at the dam?
in their facilities? No.
There's no way.
No. Yeah, not on their, it can't be associated with PG&E property. It has to be at the point of demarcation, which is on these poles. So the whole point is that we have to put this protection relay where we want to start owning the equipment. So the further along the line that we put this demarcation equipment, the more they're going to own.
I understand that.
And we can't go backwards into their system because they won't let us own any of their equipment. And their line is, we come off of an existing line. So they're not going to allow us to put it anywhere in their line. We have to do it off the radio line.
Could we purchase a portion of that line?
It's operational. It's a two-way transmission line. It not only feeds the 12 kV, but it also accepts power from the Salt Springs Power Plant when it's in operation.
So, I guess just to clarify, the three of you did a great job in your negotiation with PG&E a month ago or 6 weeks ago, and there was a resolution that allowed us to bring our cost estimate down from 39 million something down to just shy of 37 million, and it was going to save us a lot of O&M costs. Other than this wrinkle, is there any backtracking otherwise?
There's new developments daily with PG&E, but no, I think we are stable at this point.
So there's no, I mean, I had thought, and I was waiting until what I heard today, but I was thinking about, suggesting that we ramp up the PR campaign that we were thinking about a couple of months ago when we were running into all these unexpected costs and so on, but there's no need to do that in your mind?
No, I don't think there's a need. I don't think we'd be productive.
I'd like to make a couple comments. I mean, I talk to Michael a couple times a week on this, and Bob, feel free to chime in. There is backtracking at a low level every week. And so what happens is they call up with an idea, and Michael gets on the phone, and with his style, which is better for dealing with PG&E than my style would be, he puts them back, and so the net is, I don't think there's been any backtracking. Secondly, at a high level. Secondly, it's pretty, I guess from my standpoint, it's pretty frustrating that we're sitting here in early August without a signed, revised, edited interconnection agreement.
Yeah.
And I, for one, am very nervous about that. In fact, we sent them comments after being told that they would do it in late May, I think. We sent them the comments on, was it June 10th or July 10th?
July 10th, we sent a revised edition.
And we were promised comments initially on May 28th, and a email did arrive on August 4th, but it wasn't comments, it was the original existing interconnection agreement for us to comment on. So, the good news is we get to author that. The bad news is we're sitting here, 2 months from hoped for energization date, 2.5 months, and 2 months from when we had our initial meeting without anything. And then third, my view is we're in the right area code or zip code. We may not have had the exact house nailed down, but the whole idea of us owning, controlling, and maintaining that 115 kV is a way better place to be than the interconnection agreement that you signed. Just kidding. But, and so, we're getting to the right place. It's just incredibly slow.
I think the other fact we should add in is PG&E wanted some assurance that we wouldn't just sign it and then never get around to fixing the switching problem. So there is a clause that says if we fail to do it, then the ownership will revert back to the original, and we'll owe all of the costs. And I think, that's a reasonable request on their part. So that's the other term they came
How
in.
open do you think they are to the pole-mounted solution versus the mini substation solution?
I believe that if their protection department, if their protection department is convinced by our solution, and they could say that to their, to the Bob Daniels, the people that I work with, he'll say that to the higher ups, and this problem will, as long as we can convince their protection people that this is a good enough or a just as good as fix, then I think we should be there. But we want to carefully craft what we're talking about so that they don't get a bad taste in their mouth. This could take a little while to design, and I think it needs to be designed correctly so that when we go and pitch this, it isn't, just a concept, but something that we've thought out, and questions that come back have answers to them, so that we don't just say, oh, we'll have to look at that, or they just, are very negative at the beginning.
So it's a $2 million risk at this point.
Yes, sir.
Right, and the risk is capital, it's not operations cost.
Right, but I understand.
Which is what we're trying to adjust for. Right, so I used to work at PG&E, I find what's going on all within the realm of reasonableness on what they're asking. It's just, there's a lot of different departments that intersect something like this, and we're seeing this. I share Standish's concern is the revised interconnection agreement will be signed prior to November 1st. We pushed them on a date to do it. They agreed to the end of September. It then has to be filed with FERC, and then they have to request an expedited review. Because technically we can't energize without that. And they're asking for favor. They like to minimize the number of favors to ones that are really important to them. And that I think, we have two risks. One is the FERC approval, and then the other is their protection engineer saying this is I'll sign up on this solution. Those are our two risks.
And I guess, for the record, you have to watch what you say on something that's being taped, and you never know who's going to watch it. But at least at this point, I'm somewhat optimistic about the less expensive solution as opposed to the mini substation for a variety of reasons. We were on a call with them on the 4th, and a number of people said that, there's wiggle room, not wiggle room, there's room in the way the relevant section of the transmission interconnection handbook is written, and so we kind of need to basically copy that verbatim to satisfy that we're going to comply. And then they did say at the mid-level, I'll call it that it had other partners or customers with things that were, like this, where solutions that they hadn't thought of had been approved. So it's definitely not a done deal, but at this point I'm optimistic about the low grade switch solution.
Okay, good, thanks.
Cautiously
Appreciate the
optimistic.
explanation.
So if we get tentatively, we get approval for this, how long will it take to actually physically construct it?
Well, it depends on the
solution?
on the solution, of
Right.
course, but I can't see that any solution would be built in 2014. So the interconnection agreement is being signed with us conforming to the TIH within a reasonable amount of time. If it's the load break, I would hope that it could be done in the construction season of 2015. If it's a switch station, that's going to be at least a 2-year operation.
Any comments from the board before we open up to the audience? Any other comments? Any comments, questions, concerns from the audience? Hearing none, we'll move to, is that it for PG&E, Michael?
Yes.
Excuse me. So we'll move to 8B2, which is overall project costs and potential risks.
In your packet and up on the screen is the Out Valley cost forecast showing the project at $37,266,000. This is up from the last forecast due to the inclusion of change orders that were approved at the last meeting and those which will be presented today. This includes a Caltrans paving item of $100,000 for additional paving work, which we will have numbers for you at the next meeting. I'll report on that in a moment. And does not reflect a potential substation savings of around $250,000. We are under budget on the substation. We have a contingency for hitting rock with the drilling of the ground rods. The ground rods are an inch or 3/4 of an inch rods that are placed at 90 different locations within the Canyon Green substation, and then they're actually foot diameter holes that are drilled. These rods are placed and the ground is placed around those. But anyway, we have a large contingency for hitting rock. I don't believe that it's going to hit the $250,000, so I believe that we will have some savings in that regard. Going into potential risks, and some of these risks have been minimized since I put the agenda together. So we continue to work with Caltrans on the Snow State paving issue between Kirkwood and Silver Lake. As the board will remember, our design was to be in the shoulder, but due to safety concern, they asked us to go into the pavement. We have been advised that areas outside the fog line or to the west of the fog line would not have to be repaved, so the trench paving will be sufficient. We've also been told that instead of having to pave to the center line of the road, to the yellow line like we did last year, that we can go to the center of the travel lane. So there's two wheel wells, center of the travel lane. They don't want a edge, a ending of the trench in the travel lane itself. They want it to be in the middle or on at the yellow line, either one. We should have the exact numbers on how much this paving should be next meeting. So we will begin our paving, Q&D will begin their paving work at the end of this month. An additional issue is that the cable run between sectionalizing cabinets 36 and 37 could not be completed due to excessive bends in the conduit. So there's 50-some bend or poles that we're talking about here, and I'm pleased to announce that only one of them we had a problem getting the cable through the conduit. How does this happen? Well, the engineer figures on how many bends you can actually make in order to still get the cable through. But if they put in additional bends this way, or horizontally or vertically, that puts additional strain on the pulling. And if you go any more than 4,000 pounds per square inch, you start damaging the actual cable, and you can't do that. You have to back off. So on this particular run, which is the run to the west of the Silver Lake Bridge, so and we've all been there several times where we can park and look. Well, the other way, going up into the forest, is this section that we're talking about. And this 2,100-foot section is in rock, as Peter mentioned, and because of the additional bends that they had to do to get away from the rock, we're having issues with pulling the cable through the conduit. What you do in this type of a situation, you put in an additional sectionalizing cabinet, which we found an area to do. It's on EID property. They have been notified. We have ordered the sectionalizing cabinet to be installed about midway through this, and we're very confident that we can pull from either end and make this problem work. So this was a bigger risk a couple days ago, but we were able to find a solution, so that the impact now is less than $10,000.
So before I open it up to the board for questions or comments, I think it's in the audience interest, the current cost estimate is $37,266,000 versus a budget of that we established, I think, about 2 years ago, or a target of $37 million. So we've been a lot further over. We're, in my mind, kind of on budget. Michael understands, at least the way you grade his general manager objective, is that if it's $37 million and $1, he doesn't get that, right? So he's
I've
fully
started a savings
incentivized
account.
to get it under $37 million. And I asked him earlier, how do you feel about that? And I guess I'd say it's possible, but it's absolutely not a no-brainer at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, what I always go by is the calculations that were done by Howard Barnes and presented at our September 2012 meeting, where we decided to proceed. And that was $35 million plus or minus 10%. The analysis was done with $35 million plus or minus 10%. So we're well within that range.
I have an additional risk I'd like to address, if that's all right.
I don't know. How big is it? Sure.
Thank you. During the design phase of the project, our engineers expressed concern to PG&E over the lack of tension on the 12 kV lines that they had specified. This is the droop of the lines, and actually several board members actually commented on the droop of the lines during our construction, during our site inspections. During the installation, our contractor voices similar concerns. Now complete, it turns out there is a problem with clearances due to the lack of tension. There's problems with the clearances between the lines and with the actual pole itself. PG&E is committed to finding a solution to this problem, and they've committed to me having that solution by Monday. So it could be installing weights on the line. We don't know exactly what they're going to come up with, but they made an error in their computations. This is not the entire 12 kV. This is only the portion that's going down that very steep hill. Pulls 0 over 1 through 0 over 13. And by the way, the numbering scheme of the poles has been finalized. So, unless there's questions on that, on this risk.
Well, whose financial risk is it?
So I asked that question of our legal counsel, and I asked it of our, and it kind of depends. It would seem a no-brainer that if you made a mistake, you need to expend funds to correct that mistake. And that's the way that we've been approaching this all along.
Is that all you have for this topic?
Yeah, so I should know more about this topic by the next board meeting, but actually I should know more about this by Monday, but, and I will keep the ad hoc committee informed of what the repair situation is.
So I went back and reviewed Howard's presentation from, this is actually the presentation from March of 2012, which was the preliminary one, and the modeling that we did at that time assumed out-value project of $38.5 million.
Yeah, that's 35 plus the 10%.
Yeah, right, okay, and then the other items, the powerhouse of 10.9, and buying Mountain Utilities for 2.3, and 200,000 for the meters.
Any comments or questions from other members of the board? From the audience? Nancy Trivatti. I'll identify you if I know your name. Nobody else identifies himself.
I just would like to congratulate the board as well as Michael and the other staff for, because there seems to be a high degree of confidence looking farther into the board, into Michael's upcoming performance objectives, that you're going to meet that budgetary number.
Yeah, I think we're ahead of schedule and on budget, is the way I characterize the project. Thank you. Any other comments, questions from the audience? Welcome, Terry.
Thank you.
Just a side note, if I may, the numbering scheme for the polls, this has been a really confusing issue, and many board members have asked, why is it so different? So originally it was numbered for PG&E. 0 over 1 is their designation for the first number meaning the mile within how long. So it's 0 over 1 is the first pole in the first mile. And then it switches at pole number 16, because that's after the first mile. So that's 1 over 16, 1 over 17. That's why we refer to that 1 over 21 as the last 115 pole, as it's the last pole of the 115, but it's in the first mile, the 21st pole. We didn't go with those numbers because we're only a mile and an eighth. I didn't think we needed to. We go 1 through 37, so that's why our numbers are different. But we had to differentiate the first 3 poles because we'll now own those, because those will now be 0 over 1A through 0 over 1.3, and then we'll start with 0 over 1. So I know that
Sounds like you really resolved it well.
The reason that I went with existing numbers and went with this is that there's stamps on the poles, and there's going to be as-bills that refer to these stamps and refer to that. I didn't have a choice, Mr.
You seem to be having a trouble with numbering, like with the absorption.
Yeah, that's right.
I have it.
We'll renumber them in the future and then change it back.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thanks for clarifying that, Michael. So 8B3 is B8 drawdown schedule.
The B8 supplemental loan has received the necessary approvals and is now at the FFB awaiting funding, which should be completed by mid-August. District staff is working with the Finance Committee on the strategy of these draws. The board has previously approved the Finance Committee to determine this schedule with the final concurrence of the draw by the board president or treasurer. And I just wondered if Bob had any comments on our direction.
No, we discussed it quite a bit recently this last week, and felt we needed additional data to come up with a final answer. But I guess I would offer a couple of observations, and that is to be able to document our overall approach to this. And so I think there's a couple points I would want to make on that. One is that we've decided that we want to always have $2 million of operating cash available. But I just want to remind everybody that we can't commingle the electric utility cash with any other cash. So I'd like to propose that we figure out, we'll present a proposal, that of that $2 million, what percentage of it is electric and what percentage is everything else? Because we can't move funds between those, and we might do that by just looking at a percentage of operating costs and do it that way. So that's one point I wanted to make. The second is we decided, because we're running 2 systems concurrently in this next fiscal year, that's going to cause a temporary spike in electric rates. And we decided that we would smooth that out through the use of property taxes. And then once things stabilize, then start to reduce that. The other point I'd make is our main ability to have cash for capital purchases for everything except electricity really comes from property taxes, because we don't have any cash generators in anything else, maybe propane a little bit, but not really. So it's the only way to get cash for capital for everything else is either to be able to get it from property taxes or to do a bond. So I can kind of imagine that there'll be a period of time for a couple of years where cash for capital may be tight depending on how the exact finances work out. So that's the other point I'd want to make. And then lastly, in terms of the drawdown, the way to reduce the electric rates, there's only 2 ways to do it. One is to reduce the debt service, and the other is to increase the amount of consumption. And so the consumption is up to the weather and success in developers building new properties or putting up new lifts. So that's completely out of our control. The debt service is the only thing under our control. So the thing we're really debating is how much cash can we safely use to pay down debt, because that is the only way that's the only thing under our control to lower rates in the electric area, which are at an all-time high as expected. That's what we're.
I have a question about one of the things you said. You said that the only way for us to raise cash right now for capital is with property taxes.
For non-electric, yeah.
For non-electric.
Or a bond.
Or a bond.
Yeah.
But since when we look at our income statements, we have a line for depreciation, and it seems like we're covering 80% of our depreciation, or so we're not covering it all. So doesn't that generate cash?
It does,
We
but
build cash over time.
But the majority of the depreciation is in electric. It does a little bit.
Wastewater treatment and the water.
Right, but we can look at this on the financials, but if you put electricity aside, propane is the only entity whose rates cover depreciation. The others, when you include depreciation, are at a loss.
Starting with the wastewater treatment plant, which is our biggest loser.
I know it's a loss. I just thought that we were covering at least some portion of it.
It's a good question whether there's some nominal.
Yeah, there is the difference there. We're losing money in water, wastewater, but we are covering more depreciation. There is a difference between the two, and we are generating cash in that fashion. We used to never generate any cash in these departments, but now the difference is that we are covering depreciation even though we're still losing, but we are tracking
So it's
depreciation.
some.
There is some.
It is a little, but I'm concerned that it's more closer to a rounding error than a large benefit. But those are the issues that we're trying to trade off. And then I think we'll come up with some observation and ask to codify that so we all can institutionalize what the overall strategy is. And then we also have to assume some amount of new capital will be needed for Out Valley after November 1st. Right? I mean, we've heard up to $2 million. I don't know if we'll need that much, but I'm going to assume that we'll put aside $200,000 a year for electric capital, and then when we discover we don't need it, we can earn 5% on that money. When we discover we don't need it, then we could use it to pay down debt.
Any other comments or questions from the board on the B8 loan strategy? Members of the audience? We'll move to 8C, which is discussion and possible approval of change orders, 6 change orders. And if my arithmetic is correct, the total net, including the credit, is $57,000.
That is correct. Several change orders before the board today. The KM Green substation, the station service for $26,176 is for work required to provide power to the KM Green control building. This is 110 power from PG&E off the 12 kV line. So to fire up the batteries, to make sure that we have power for the annunciator panels and everything else, and to charge those batteries in case that line goes down, we need a 110 power source, which will, we actually become PG&E customers for this, heaters, lights, things like that. PG&E gave us a bid of, asked for a deposit to engineer this substation service for $25,000. We thought that we could do it for that amount, and so we, instead of having PG&E do the work, we asked Wilson to do it. They completed it at $26,176. This will be a deduct off of what we paid to PG&E, because it was in their original estimate. So some of these change orders are not change orders that cost money. This, we're just changing Wilson's contract to include $26,000, but we will be receiving a deduct off payment to PG&E for that or a similar amount. EPP KM Green control building, EPP being the manufacturer of the control building, for $15,733, covers design revisions, including additional terminal blocks, test switches, Ethernet switches, and fuse blocks that were, again, required by PG&E. Again, a portion of this work was a change order from PG&E requesting that the district complete this work on a timeliness issue, and we will be doing a deduct from that as well. Bear River Road, past the dam, if you remember during our site inspections, this road was in not best condition at all. We then drove on it with heavy equipment, and we dug up the side of it, and it's in far less better. It's in less.
It's in bad shape.
It's in bad shape. We have negotiated a chip sealing that road for Amador County at a cost of $43,000. As I mentioned, this is this damage was due to the road being already decomposed and driving heavy equipment on it. Chip sealing will give the county a usable service.
We're just doing the half that we damaged.
We're doing the entire road chip sealing, but it's a lot cheaper than having to pave it. Collars, this is a $15,350 additional cost to install collars around electric vault and plow areas along Highway 88 and Bear River Road. These are areas, these collars actually stabilize the lids. And the lid and the vault, there's a concrete vault, and then you put this lid, this foot tall lid on top of it. It's a metal lid. But they're not actually connected. They sit on it, just like if you know the design of a manhole. There's rings, they're not actually connected as well. So concrete, and you can see our work recently, we've been concreting in some of the susceptible manholes along Crooked Meadows Drive. This is the exact same concept of putting a foot deep concrete lid around these susceptible vaults. And so I know paving, I know plowing, I asked for this change. So this is a $15,350 additional expense. Bollards, we actually installed these ballers. I think they're very nice. They're right out here on Crooked Meadows Drive. Wilson was going to install quite a few ballers for a cost of $48,000. I thought staff could do a really good job with this at a reduced cost. This change order actually reduces the amount of the contract to Wilson by the cost of these bollards, and the district will be doing it in-house. So total change order listed amount to an additional cost of $57,143. Some of the $57,000 will be a deduct from PG&E, as I mentioned earlier. So this has a less of an impact than even the $57,000, and I request board approval of these change orders.
Just one question on this one in particular. So the angle the car needs to hit this needs to be just right, otherwise it will hit the cabinet.
Mhm.
So is there a reason why we don't try to protect the center? From a direct assault, if you will?
That's where the cables go. They
Uh-huh.
enter into the cabinet, not from the back,
Oh,
but to
from
the
the
side.
front.
The cables go,
Oh.
they sweep into the front and they sweep out.
Oh, I see.
So this would be exactly where the snow poles in the sectionalizing cabinets out in the, this is
Uh-huh.
where they'll go because it's a clear spot.
Okay.
You could put it back behind it,
Yeah.
but you're not protecting anything. So,
All right. So, if a car wants to hit it, there's an angle of
There's-
attack that'll work.
there is an angle.
Or head on.
The main fear is the snow.
Michael Bob here. A question on the chip sealing item, the $43,000.
See anything?
You know, the road was already in bad shape before we damaged it with heavy equipment. Was there any attempt to try to get a cost sharing of this with the county?
Yes, the county doesn't have any money budgeted for repaving of Bear River Road, but that was the best alternative, Bob, is to actually do something that would last forever.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions, comments from the audience? Or any others from the board? So your recommendation is approval of all these change orders?
Please.
Entertain a motion.
Well, I just note that we did review this at the
Yeah, we did.
Operations Capital.
I'm sorry, I should have.
And Michael, put the difference in the overall budget. There's a negative, a slight, what is it, 16,000 negative in change. Most of them are pass-through, but it's a 16,000 negative total. Yeah, I would move that we approve these change orders. Dornbrook?
Rickard seconds.
All in favor, Andy?
NDI?
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Dornbrook, aye?
Epstein, aye.
So it passes unanimously. Moving to 8D, which is discussion and possible action regarding district's insurance coverages and limits.
That's a timed item for 10 o'clock, if you would
Okay.
defer on that until.
We're ahead of schedule.
And you're doing guidance.
8E, discussion and possible action regarding the district's wastewater collection system capital plan. And this includes a presentation by Sharp Productions.
You saw that. Due to technical difficulties, we're going to actually look at this production via the paper copy that's in the packet. If I switch PowerPoints right now, I might not be able to get back, and I have to get back. So, part of the 2014 capital plan is to begin making repairs on the wastewater collection system. Before we begin making major repairs and spending funds, district staff recommends continuing to complete research this fall, and especially next spring during our infiltration season, to determine the issues in the oldest area, and that would be KMA, the west side. This investigation will include cameraing and hydrojetting lines suspected of having issues, and then developing a plan to complete lining or pipe replacement in the fall of 2015. This issue was also discussed extensively at the operations capital meeting. So what I'm asking is to actually continue our investigation. not be digging up lines at this point, but more of the hydrojetting of specific lines, flat lines that have been identified, lines that we know that are problems, identify where the problems are, what the best means of repair of those lines are, whether it be a lining, and I think I've mentioned in the past what lining is, you put in a plastic sleeve and blow it up. Or in the case of Yarrow, we might have to dig up the line because of a sag in the line, which just can't be repaired by a lining. You'd have to actually dig it up and reinstall it, because if there's a sag in the line, of course, as the gravity this system, it will never break. So on page 63 in your packet, and then we've made copies for the audience, is a PowerPoint. 62. Once again, I apologize that it's not on the board, but we've taken a look on description of the problems, the pipe sag that I've talked about, a joint offset where there's two pipes and they actually offset each other. Infiltration and inflow is just basically exactly what it says, water from the drainage system or storm course that gets into the collection system. Obstacles and fog, which is oil and grease. I think that's fuel, oil, and grease.
Fats.
Fats, so that'd be grease. And then root intrusion, which there's some pictures of. So the area in question that we've looked at already is the west side, and that's shown on page 64 in your packet. KM8 is definitely the worst, it's the oldest, and it has the AC pipes, which is asbestos concrete. Everything else in the valley was installed with SDR35, which is plastic pipe, green pipe that you see on the trucks all the time. Everything in the valley is 6-inch pipe, which is connected into manholes at varying lengths. Pipe sag, we actually have a pipe over on Yarrow where we put the television in and it went underwater. It actually doesn't work very well underwater, you can't see anything, and so you have to pull it back out. That is one that we'd like to hydrojet and then re-televise to see where it actually starts this dip and where it comes back up. It might not have to be dug up from the two manholes. We might be able to dig up a section of it, go in, fix the pipe, do the repair couplings, and then move on. But until you know that, you don't really, you know that it went underwater at 50 feet, but you don't know how far the water actually extends until you actually hydro it, get rid of the water, and then re-televise it and see exactly where you have a problem. So that's the reason that I'd like to do additional investigation, is to find out, we might get volume discounts if we know that in this section, this section we need to do lining, but here we need to dig up. We might be able to do that in-house as well. Joint offset, exactly as the picture describes on 66, where due to lack of compaction of the underlying material, the pipe actually disconnects and you have a joint offset. And there's a picture of an actual joint offset here. And these pictures are from the video that we've done on our lines. So these conditions actually exist. Infiltration and inflow, once again, I love the picture on 67 showing the little squirting water. That's 37% of our wastewater treatment is from infiltration and inflow, and that little squirt is 37% of our cost. So I'd like to eliminate that. Of course, the fats, oil, and grease accumulation. We have grease traps throughout the valley, and we maintain those on a regular basis. Part of the hydrojetting would be to hydrojet areas beyond grease traps, where fats and greases could have accumulated beyond the interceptions. That's just a normal maintenance issue. For roots, we're very fortunate. We don't have as many roots as they do in the valley. We don't have oak trees and cottonwood trees that are very susceptible, but we still get the issues as shown. We've identified 4 different projects. Projects in the severity rank 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 and 4 carry $2,500 price tags on them. I think there's probably an additional $5,000 worth of investigation that I'd like to do. This would be an expense item until we actually start wining or replacing. This is more investigation and maintenance work. But it would be my hope that we could complete this project this year as far as the maintenance work, and then in the fall with the new capital plan that will be approved in July 1st of 2015, that we identify some true capital projects. So that's my direction, and if that sounds good to the board, I'd like confirmation of that direction.
I gather you
Yeah,
consider.
the committee discussed it, and we felt that it was very path to take, especially the jetting, 'cause it's going to be a subcontractor doing this, it's going to take staff time, and the further camera exploration will make a big difference. So yeah, I'd prefer to, you want a motion?
Well, any other comments or questions from the audience? Nancy Trevette?
Just, I'm glad the district is pursuing this, but when it comes time to, or if it comes time to, disturb any of the roads in KMA, that there be some kind of coordination with KMA, because annually we do some type of road work, and it would be terrible for us to do road work only to find out if you're gonna come back and dig. And then secondly, knowing that some of those pipes do have asbestos, if there's going to be any disturbing of that at any time, that our homeowners association be notified.
Yeah, I would advise KMA not to do any repaving in Yarrow in the near future, because, I think it's fairly clear that we're going to have to excavate that possibly next year, I would guess, because it's a big blockage.
Yeah, and
Not alignment. And
yeah.
it's right in the middle. If you look on page 59, kind of shows, is a better indication of where the manholes are, and that one goes right down the middle of the screen, I believe, right? So that would have a big impact on the paving.
Yeah, and Yarrow was just redone, last year, was just redone completely. So we cherish that road.
What we're planning on doing, if you look on page 59, it won't be in the roadway this fall, right, Michael? We're looking at hydrojetting between manhole 30 and 34, which is actually to the north of the roads. So if we have to do, worst case comes that we have to replace that line, we're not going to be excavating any pavement.
Okay. And so you're looking for approval or just board direction?
Consensus of the board that our direction, rather than spending the capital funds, that we continue on an investigation until we have a firmer capital project is actually.
So with the consensus of the Operations and Capital Committee, and Bob and me too. So, Michael, should we keep going or go back to 8D?
I think 8D would be fantastic.
Great. So we're going to move to 8D, discussion of possible action regarding district's insurance coverages and limits. Manager Sharp will introduce our guests.
I'm pleased to introduce Andy Sells and Chuck Wagenseller from Aqua JPIA. The district has been members of Aqua JPIA for 20-plus years. We've had a very good relationship with them. I have been down to their executive committee a couple of times, and we get excellent service from them. And the board asked that we do a regular meeting with Aqua JPIA just as a check of our insurance coverages, if there's any insurance questions that you might have. And Andy and Chuck were extremely willing to drive up here on their day off to give us this update. So thank you very much and welcome. Your PowerPoint is going to be done via paper. We're having technical difficulties, but everyone has received it. So when you refer to a slide, they'll know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, thanks. I'm Andy, by the way. Is this right here is fine?
This is great.
Perfect. And this is just kind of an overview of the Aqua JPIA, a little bit how it works, and some of the resources that are available there. I do have other handouts if others are interested at all. I brought Chuck with me, and Chuck's really the expert. He has a big PG&E background, electrical background. I know that that's on you guys' agenda these days and some of the things, so he may have, if you have questions at any time, Chuck will be a better resource than I am on that situation, which is why Chuck is here. So like I said, you can ask questions at any time. It's a pretty casual presentation here, and give you kind of an update of what we are, what we do, and where you're at in the process. The Aqua JPA, that second slide there, it's a partnership of about 370 water agencies in the state of California right now. We have 4 main programs that we have. We have a liability program. Liability would be if for third-party losses. If a water main broke, let's say, or a water pipe broke and flooded somebody's house and they sued you, or maybe one of your employees was involved in an automobile accident and somebody sued you, that's where that liability program would come from. It would kick in at that point. The property program is first person, what we call first person loss. That would be like your homeowner's insurance, you know, your vehicles, your buildings, your pumps, your substations, those are all covered under the property program. And then workers' comp, of course, does workers' compensation. And then we now have the health benefits side. You guys are a member of ACWA, Association of California Water Agencies, and ACWA basically lobbies on behalf of water districts around the state and federally as well. And in order to participate at the JPIA, you have to be a member of ACWA. There were 2 separate joint powers authorities, JPIA doing liability, property, and workers' comp, and there was another one called Health Benefit Authority. And the Health Benefit Authority, it kind of struggled. It started in, I want to say, around 2007 maybe, and they never really got going. So in 2012, that was all, those operations were rolled into our operations as well. So we do the health benefits now as well. So there's 370 water, they're free to choose. You can be in the property program and not liability, or liability and workers' comp and not property. That you can intermix them, and members are free to choose how you do that. Kirkwood then participates in all 3 of our, what we call property casualty, liability, property, and workers' comp. There are, in the state of California, a couple hundred joint powers authority. It's just a very cost-effective way for public entities to do insurance. I'd say probably 95% of all entities do their insurance through a joint powers authority, if you will. School districts do it a lot. There's a lot of JPAs tied to school districts. Cities and counties get together and do it, cities. The big districts like, you know, East Bay Mud or Met in Southern California, they're so large they're going to self-insure. Turlock ID, for instance, self-insures, Imperial. And then the cities, the big cities, they self-insure themselves as well. Since all of our participants, like you folks, are all public entities, you all have an elected group, an elected board, it makes us a public entity as well. So there's no profit margin involved, we don't pay any income taxes, there's no sales commissions, and that's why public entities do it. It's just a very effective, cost-effective way to do insurance for public entities in the state of California. From my point of view, we're not insurance. We are risk-sharing pools. You guys are bound by contract with the other participants in those pools there. So the neat thing for me is I don't have to file an annual report with the commissioner, you know, the Department of Insurance. So it's a little thick and we avoid that. But it gives us a lot of flexibility the way we do things. We have coverages that are unique to water districts that were asked for by the water districts. We don't use just what's called a form, you know, an industry standard form. Ours is what's called manuscripted. It's written by us, for us, written by the water districts, for the water districts. And for instance, you know, an insurance company can be held for bad faith, for instance. Since we're not an insurance company, we're not subject to bad faith there. So those are some of the unique advantages of being in a pool and how pools work. I should have numbered these slides. The next one we just talk a little bit is the governance slide. And just to give you a clue of how this works then, like I said, our board of directors is...
Which slide is it?
It says governance at the top. It must be slide number 4, I believe.
On page 46.
46, right.
Okay.
They're 46. Our 46.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could follow along. And you can help me out
I
here.
can.
Okay.
Or
46.
say next slide.
Next slide, there we go, okay, governance. So basically, our board of directors, I have a board with 370 board members on it. Each water district appoints. I think you're our appointed director on our board, is that correct? I think you are.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, good. And what that board does, though, is they elect an exec. So that board meets twice a year at the Aqua conferences. It's nice to know that you're part of that group, huh? But your group then elects an executive committee from your members, and that group then is really who sets policy for us. They hire me, they set, we review all of our coverages with them, any limit changes, costs, all go through this executive committee. That committee meets about once a month, 8, 9, 10 times a year. From that executive committee, and that's made up of other elected officials from around the state, and it's kind of balanced. There's a couple from San Diego. We have Lou Rinkins is with Tahoe City PUD, for instance. Tom Cuquette is a farmer there at Sutter. He's a rice farmer at Sutter. Dave Hodgins is over by Monterey there. So it kind of spread around the state. Most of them, the southern part of the state, that's where most of our water districts come from. And then there are a group of committees that are, like there's a committee that looks only at the liability program. We meet Monday, as a matter of fact, and a committee for workers' comp and a committee for health benefits and such. And that's made up of other directors and staff members from around the state. And we try and keep those balanced, a few from the south, a few from the Central Valley, a few from the north. We try and keep large districts and small districts in there. So since those are appointed positions, we're better able to kind of keep a balance there, if you will. On that next slide there, I talked already a little bit about the different programs, liability, property, workers' comp, and employee benefits. I think the interesting things of note there is the liability program, there's $60 million worth of coverage in that program. And there's no aggregate cap on that. So we could have an unlimited number of $60 million claims. I don't ever want to have that, don't get me wrong, but there's no cap there. So what happens, there's about 290 members in that liability pool. We all pool those losses together, and everybody has a proportionate share up to $2 million. So you're part of that 290 members, and if there's a loss, you share in the first $2 million of a loss. Anything over that then goes to what we call excess insurance, and we purchase that excess insurance. We spend about $5 million a year on that excess insurance. Total premiums coming into that program is roughly $12 to $15 million in that program there. Kind of gives you a little bit of a clue on how that works. The property program, there's $100 million in limits there, no aggregate cap there. We actually have a couple of districts that will have total assets greater than $100 million. But the question there is, what's their exposure? Because they're spread out geographically, what are the chances of having that whole exposure at one time? I guess Orange County would be the one that would be, because they have that giant water treatment plant there and water replenishment plant. Their lab is there and all of their facilities, the lab, the facilities, most of their yard is right there. So they could have an exposure there, and they buy on their own limits a little higher than that $100 million. Workers' compensation, there's about 175, almost 180 participants in that pool. That's statutory limits there. Workers' compensation is something that's going to come up. Michael and I have been talking about that. Your volunteer fire department is an issue that we've been working with. We're looking for different options there. The issue, quite frankly, is that, I don't know if you're aware, but in the state of California, there's the whole issue of presumption of injury. And firefighters, whether you're volunteer or not, firefighters, policemen, security officers, prison guards and such, they all have this presumption of injury, so that if there is certain cancers, hypertension, heart conditions, there's about 5 or 6 of them, they are now up to 10 years past their service. If they develop any one of those issues, it's deemed workers' comp. There's just no questions asked. Part of the dilemma for us is that it's a pool, and we spread that risk around. You guys are the last ones that still are covering a volunteer fire department there, and so it's hard to figure out what that premium should be. Michael and I have talked about this a couple of times. For instance, Chuck and I were talking about it. Ramona down in Southern California is now contracted out with CAL FIRE. I know Monterey does CAL FIRE as well. We haven't had contacts with them. I don't know. We did a preliminary look to see if State Fund would take over part of that. It's an expensive way to go. So you're good this year. We're good in July. And Michael and I have agreed that we'll talk, and I may come up and talk with you again to see what different options out there. But that's something that's on the radar that we're looking at. And then, of course, in the employee benefit side, we do health, dental, vision, life. At the next slide here,
Is
this,
EAP pension, or
pardon me?
it says EAP on the slide, is that a pension program?
No, it's EAP is an employee assistance program. It's a great little thing. I don't know if do you guys have an EAP program here?
We actually do, we have a,
Yeah. You know, it's a very underutilized program. It's pretty cost effective. It's probably costing you, what, $2 to $3 a month per employee type thing. It's probably in that area there. There's, there's legal service consultation involved there. There is counseling involved there. They just have a lot of services that could be beneficial to the employee. The one we use, it also provides like training sessions up to 6 times a year for like your management team on, issues, employment practice issues, issues helping employees through different issues there. So it's really for the cost, there's a lot of services available there. I encourage members to look at it. We use MHN, I'm not sure. Are you using, I don't know if you're using our MHN plan, or do you have one you've contracted with yourself?
separate.
That's what I thought, yes. They're very good, cost-effective programs. They can save you a lot of money just in giving an employee a chance to, counseling, legal information, legal advice, and they get, like I said, up to 6 times a year, or depending on what your contract is. Very effective little programs.
So I have a question probably for both of you. So some of these services we do through CalPERS. Is that by choice, or is that required?
Health services is by choice.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
And pension is required through CalPERS, or?
and pension.
Yes, now CalPERS offers a health benefit program as well. I think you guys are using CalPERS, and it's something you might someday look at just to see what it is. I know that there was some issues with the pooled program early on. Service was not as good as expected, but now, now that we're doing it, I think the service is a little better. Certainly it's better funded now. We're in a situation, this year we had basically an aggregate, no change in our rates this year, because we were able to use some of our reserves to do that with. I will just point out one thing, it's kind of my little, soapbox these days. In the health industry, and I know CalPERS doesn't offer it yet, but I'm sure it's coming. You're going to hear, just as a side note, you're going to start hearing more and more about what are called account-based health plans or consumer-driven health plans. And these are basically high-deductible health plans tied to a health savings account. Health savings accounts are kind of unique in that the money goes in tax-free, it's earned tax-free, and it's spent tax-free. Not like your IRA or something like that, or a Roth where you pay the taxes up front. It has a very favored tax status because that's what they're pushing. The neat thing about a health savings account is it belongs to the employee. If the employee puts money in there, or if the district helps fund it, that's the employee's money. If they leave, if they retire, it goes with them. Once again, it's the only tax vehicle that you can put money in tax-free. It'll accumulate earnings tax-free, and when you spend it on medical items, which is very broad-based, also tax-free. So it's a very unique thing. The reason why I say you're going to hear about these things, it's kind of working its way east to west, we've been talking about it now, is it's a great thing for the employees, like I said, because I don't know if you guys have any contribution requirements of the employees at this point. In my case, we have offering these plans. the savings that the district achieves in this health, when they do the high deductible plan, allows for like a single employee, and for most parts, it's about a $1,500 savings, which is the deductible there, or close to it. Certainly on the family side, the district, the savings is, you know, maybe $3,500 or more on an annual basis, and the deductible is $3,000. So what we're encouraging districts to do, and I know I'm getting a little bit off track here, but I wanted you to kind of hear about it because I think you're going to hear more about it, is what the district could in essence do is sign up for this high deductible plan, and then the employee would now have $1,500 deductible, but then you could take your savings and fund that health savings account for them. So it's about a wash to the district, a little bit of a savings, but it's about a wash to the district, and it's a wash to the employee. So for those employees that are, you know, lucky, however you want to use it, practicing good health, making good decisions, they could maybe make a little money in this deal, and it would just continue to grow year after year. There's no limit to it. And so that's why you're going to hear about it. In an industry, what's happening is they want consumers, the health industry, the health insurance industry specifically, wants consumers to be involved in this decision process. They want the consumer to ask for that generic drug. They want the consumer to find the best price on their MRI or their blood panel or anything like that. There are software programs out there, as a matter of fact, we're looking at one that literally would be on their iPhone, and your employee went to the doctor, slid into second base, got a sore shoulder, doctor wants an MRI. You could literally, with a 25, and you guys, you know, in the city it's a 12-mile radius. Up here, you know, you're 25, maybe 50-mile radius. But you could find where the best price for that MRI is. If you have a high deductible, and you can get that MRI for $800 as opposed to $2,500 before, you're going to do that $800 MRI, bring it back to your doctor, let him or her read that, and put that, you know, make that savings into your pocket there. So you're going to be hearing more and more about it. I would suggest that you let your employees hear about it. Like I said, CalPERS doesn't offer one yet, but I have people on their board. They're looking at it. The industry is going to push it. For a lot of our districts, the employees put a certain amount of dollars towards their premium. If you could set it up where they get to save that money, and maybe if they don't use it, you know, you got my son, a young, healthy, they call those invincibles there, those 25 to 35-year-olds. They don't use a lot of health services, they don't use a lot of health benefits. They could make money in that situation, and so that if they ever had a catastrophic year, they'd have the money there so that it wouldn't come out of their family budget. So that's why you're going to see more of it. Sorry, I got off on track there, but I would watch for that. You're going to be hearing more of it. The industry is going to be pushing you towards that direction. So the sooner, as you just see little bits and pieces, I would take a look at it. So under unique coverages, you know, slide 48, thank you. Directors and officers coverage. By itself, it's not real unique, except for one of the factors is that it follows you. So if your district appointed you to another board, maybe a commerce board or some other board, and that board didn't have directors and officers coverage, and that board was sued, the coverage from the JPA would follow you. You would have coverage, the full $60 million worth of coverage. The other members on that board, not so lucky, but for you folks, and that was something that the water districts wanted to have, because you get involved in other activities around the community and such, so that coverage follows you. That's kind of unique. You know, boiler and machinery is included in the property program, so you don't have to worry about, I use the example, the pump transformer for you guys catches fire inside the building there. So if you had two separate carriers, the carrier on the building is going to say that it was the transformer that caught fire or that electrical panel that caught fire, that's what burned the building, that's what's responsible. And whoever has got the insurance on the electrical panel is going to say, no, the building caught fire, that's what burned our panel down. In our case, it's all one, it doesn't matter, one unit carries it all. And inverse condemnation is included in that. It's kind of a unique coverage where if if the district has found that through either their action or inaction, they devalued the value of that property or took it by such, then that would be covered. Inverse is going to be alleged a lot because if the plaintiff is successful, they get to collect their attorney's fees on it. So one of the issues that got caught there is sometimes if you don't have inverse coverage, even though it's whether or not it's going to be applicable, you get caught in how much is the insurance company going to defend. If they're going to say half of that is negligence and half of it's inverse, then they're only going to pay half of the defense on that and expect you to cover the other half of the defense or a third, whatever they deem that is. Since it's covered here, you don't have those issues. We didn't at one time cover inverse, but the water districts came back and said, geez, that's why not? Why could we get this coverage included? It went through the liability program to the executive committee and ultimately approved by the board. So it's just kind of the uniqueness of the way we work there. I know I'm kind of dragging on here, sorry. Next slide, number 49. We do offer a lot of services, that's why I brought Chuck here with me. I know that you guys deal with Scott as well. We have risk control specialists that are out in the field. Peter lives in San Diego. Lee Patton lives in the LA Riverside, Northridge area. Keith Forbes lives in the Central Valley. And they literally go visit these districts once, twice a year, looking for ways to reduce exposures, costs. Chuck comes with a great electrical background. He works with our districts. You guys are putting in a new I think getting ready for the transmission line. Have you accepted the work on that yet? Are you?
Not yet.
Not yet. So that's something, and Chuck could help you in that area there. We do webinars. We have an EPL hotline. If you had an employment practice issue, Michael or somebody from the district could call and talk to an attorney, talk to our staff. If we can't answer that question, we have a contract and you could talk to an attorney for 30 minutes. It doesn't cost you anything. And the reason why we're doing that is if we can get the information to you to help minimize, maybe it's getting your documentation in order. Maybe we can give you enough advice that you can handle it before it turns into a claim, because employment practice claims in the state of California are very expensive. If you take a claim to trial, you're at a minimum you're going to be $200,000, $250,000 in just attorney's fees getting ready for it. It's in California we're a little bit fortunate up here, but in Southern California it's very litigious. Those things go to court, and even if you settle it for average settlement is like $85,000, and that's low in the industry but we do that. So if we can get to that early before it gets to that point, before attorneys are involved, that's why that employment practice hotline is there. We do a lot of different trainings for the members. You guys are on slide 50 now. We do some on-site training here. We have what's called Target Solutions. It's a suite of training programs. You guys are very active in that. During the last year, you had employees use like 50 plus of those classes there. It says 54 on my list here. I know that you've done webinars. You also did a webinar a couple years back on the arc flash, looking at the exposures there in arc flash. So, you guys are a bit remote, taking advantage of those online training programs. That's a great job that staff's doing for you there. They cost you nothing other than the employee's time to sit through those. So it's a great use of resources, and it's included in those rates. So it's an effective way for you, being a little more remote, to get advantage. So I would compliment staff. That's a nice job taking advantage of those type of programs. On the next page, 51, you can see some of the types of courses that are available out there. Defensive driver, confined space entry, traffic flagger control, the different ergonomics, underground line locator classes. You can do a lot of those things there. If you notice, those are all directed directly to water district employees. So taking advantage of those, even that suite of classes that we have are kind of directed towards water districts. So it's a great use of resources there. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is, hopefully the next slide, page 52, is control costs. That's the only way that pools really are going to be effective, is we have to be better than average. If you're only going to play a numbers game in this industry, the Aetnas, the Travelers, the State Farm and Farmers, they're going to be the ones that are successful. They got the dollars. They're just simply going to do that. So the real success of these pools is getting to our members, reducing our exposure to risk, not only at Kirkwood, but at San Juan, at Helix, at Pebble Beach, at Humboldt, so that as a pool collectively, we're encouraging all of our members to take advantage of those classes, reduce those exposures to risk, reduce the severity of a risk, you know. If a pipe breaks, do you know where the valve is to turn that water off? Has that valve been exercised, you know? The classic one right now, of course, is the big one there at UCLA. You know, that, did you see that pipe? That was cast iron riveted pipe in the ground for 100 years. What was its lifespan originally? 30 years? 40 at best. 100 years it was in there and it burst. Well, you saw, what, 4,000 or 40,000 gallons of water. I mean, they flooded Pauley Pavilion. They couldn't find the valve. They didn't know how to turn it off. They finally found a valve. It was rusted open. They couldn't get the valve shut. They had to go all, you know, miles up the road before they could find a valve to shut the water flowing off of that pipe. So that's a big deal for us. We work with our members. Do you know where all of your assets are? Are you exercising those valves? I mean, pipes are going to break. We know that. But can you shut that water off? That was what ultimately did them in. And that was a 36-inch main. You can imagine how much water was coming through a cast iron pipe that was riveted together 100 years ago. Sorry, that one was, you know, that's kind of the talk in the risk control industry there, yeah.
Let's move on here.
So, the next slide there, 53, it is a self-insured program. Like I said, there's no profit involved here. Funds, if we have excess funds, it goes back to the member agency. You guys have been receiving refunds, you know, for the last few years here. You've received, you know, almost $20 million, $20,000 in refunds. The next page there, it's a very stable program. It's been around for 35 years now. It's made by members, for members. It's what it does. You're in a unique little program. I work with CAJAPA, which is a statewide association of JPAs. We're one of the largest in the state, one of the largest in the country, actually. The number of members, number of premiums that go through here. We're kind of the standard in the industry as far as training and member participation. It is unique. We don't have, you know, police departments. For the most part, you know, you guys have a small volunteer, but we don't have large fire departments. We don't have large police departments. So all that we do is directed right at water districts. You know, we're not worried about, you know, dentist's office or gasoline pumps and things like that. So makes for a very unique program. In the end, it's just a very effective program. That last slide there on page 55, JPAs cost less. That's why 90% of public entities do it. This one is controlled by the members. Literally, the board sets policies, they set rates. You get very unique coverages there that are designed for water districts. Like I said, you guys are the owners. You guys set policy, and it's kind of how it works. So that's kind of a little update there. I know if you have other questions, Chuck is a good question for you.
Well, I have two questions. So one is the definition for membership. So obviously we start out as only a water district, and now we do other services. So
Right.
Is the definition just that water is one of the services
Yeah.
you provide?
Generally, water, at least when you first join, and certainly when you guys, that was what you did,
Right.
needs to be the major thing of what you do. We would not take anybody that has a volunteer fire department or a paid fire department. We certainly wouldn't do paid, and now we wouldn't do volunteer. You guys are kind of grandfathered in, but we'll have to work through that. We do have several public utility districts. We have several CSDs who have park and recreation facilities. We're okay with that as long as a lot of what you do is water. We also do have some cities, but that's only on the health benefits side because the exposure there is nothing unique. And we do have some sanitation districts as well. We don't.
And my
shy away.
second question is, one of the reasons why I asked you to come and give us some background is, obviously our major new asset is the transmission line.
Uh-huh.
And is there what do we need to know about owning that asset related to the services you provide, I guess?
Actually, the transmission line, I'm Chuck Weigenseller, by the way.
Why don't you give them a little bit of your background? That
Yeah.
might help.
I've worked at Aqua GPIA for the last 7 years as their cost estimator, engineer, and a risk management consultant. Before that, I had 36 years at Pacific Gas and Electric Company as an electric and gas engineer. And I helped your district out when you took over the propane system and your electrical system. I came up and looked at it and determined what modifications needed to be done, putting it politely, what was up here. Good question. The transmission line you're going to have is a 34.5 and 115. We don't cover overhead distribution lines or underground distribution feeders. We don't do that, and our MOC excludes that. We do cover the substations, which are two assets you need to cover. 115 to 34.5 and 34.5 to 12, I think. So you need to cover those. We can cover those. What you need to do is do what normal utilities do. That is that you need to patrol lines, inspect them on an annual basis. And I have a handout I'm going to give to Mike and others here on where you can find this information. State General Order 95, 128, which General Order 95 is for overhead lines, 128 underground, and 165 is for inspection and maintenance. Those are by the state of California. They're designed for the major utilities of the state and for public utilities as well. They have parameters on what you should do and when you should do it. They say how often you need to inspect it, what you need to do. That's great, but how do you do it? There's another, and I brought the book, which I'm going to leave here. It's called NFPA 70B. It's going to make your life easier. It has all the forms in the back that you need to do. Okay, and basically it tells you how to inspect the transformer, what you need to do when inspecting the line, what you need to look for, what inspections. For example, infrared testing, you'll need to do that on an overhead line. In the first year, you need to really patrol it well because it's still on warranty, and you need to make sure it is done right. So you'll need to inspect it, you need to check the oil, a whole collage of things you need to do at the substation and the overhead line. You'll need to patrol, vegetation control. I'm sure you've heard this before. A lot of stuff you'll need to do, but a lot of that work you can contract out. And you use an outfit from Rancho Cordova to put it in, I think, right?
Correct. Wilson Construction.
They're very good, okay? They are very good. I've had past experience with them, they are very good. But you can, your people could patrol the line relatively easy. Drive along, what to look for, busted insulators, the poles leaning. If trees are growing too close to the line, that's what you're going to have to make sure you have the clearance around it. On the underground line is a little different because it's underground and it's hard to locate. But there are ways to patrol that, especially at splice boxes, above ground equipment you need to check. So there's a collage of things you'll need to look at. And I've got a rough outline for you guys, and I'll leave it with the operational people. And I'll leave my book, it's an old edition, but it's still good. It has all the forms, what you need to do, and it's a lot easier. You don't have to recreate the wheel, you don't need to. The only problem I see for you guys in the long term, and that is what happens if you lose the transformers. Lightning hits it, what do you do? Especially 115 to 34.5, it's not a common type of transformer, and it's a long lead item. Same thing with your 34.5, 12 kV, it's a long lead item. Good news is I know where you can find them. Okay, and a couple of phone calls might be to your advantage. Edison, Southern California, out of Edison, uses 34.5 a lot. Didn't know that. Los Angeles Power and Light also uses it. And believe it or not, most of the wind farms use it.
Right.
So there's resources in the state that have supplied. Edison might be your best bet because Edison has quotation mobile transformers because they have the same problem. What happens if I lose one? So they have mobiles ready to go. So you might be able to make an arrangement with them. Okay? So that's a little side note for you. And also you'll probably need to get some, I'm sure you've already discussed it, some emergency stock in place. And on emergency stock, you really need to put that in a safe place where it's maintained. Even though it's not being used, you need to keep it away from damage. And you'll need, especially on the 115 insulators, unfortunately, your line goes through the countryside. And just like when you drive across the road, see all these nice signs with these bullet holes in them. Somebody's going to take a pot shot one of these days at your insulator. So it's going to happen. And lightning's the other worst nightmare up here to hit your line. But patrolling and maintaining the line, you should be fine. And shouldn't be a problem for you guys.
Any other questions from the board?
Sounds great, thank you.
That's useful.
And I'll leave some information with staff so they'll have it.
Any questions or comments from the audience?
Just a quick question, I mean, what, maybe this is impossible to say, but for the two substations that we have, what's the scale of the annual premium for those kind of things?
Well, I'm guessing one will probably cost you about $1 million. I'm guessing the other one's probably about $2 million.
No, the premium, the insurance.
No, that's what it costs to build,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I think it was about $2,600,000 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So take about 60% of that number, because you put in some substructures, and divide it by 1,000, and I'll get you the premium.
Can you do that for them on a calculator?
I have to get my phone out.
That's what I said.
Okay, so it's about $2 million divided by 1,000, so about 20,000.
$2 million divided by 1,000?
Isn't it $1 million, $1.6 million, 60%?
About $2,000.
2,000.
So that's about what your rough guess. And
Plus
he's-
you get
and
discount.
I bet it's not really that rough. You know, it's not like he hasn't done this for a while.
Great.
And then there's, you know, you guys participate in all the programs, so there's the multi-program discount, so pretty
Thank you.
down
That's
is
great.
great.
And thanks for coming up here today.
Thank you, guys. If you have any questions, give us a call. I may be back another time. We'll have to work on that work comp thing together and see what's the best option for you and the pool, and go forward from there. And now you know why I brought Chuck, because I couldn't have said any of that. I'm a finance guy, for heaven's sake.
It was very informative. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And it was a nice ride. Boy, we came up Iron Mountain. Oh, that's right. That's, I'm sorry, I grew up in the Placer area. That's been Iron Mountain Road forever, you know, and now, but yeah, and so when people say Norman M, we're gonna have to go, where are you again? Okay, but geez, you know, at this time of day, it just came right up here. It was a gorgeous drive, you know, just up 50 to Pollock Pines and straight across. It was no issue at all. We made very good time getting here, so.
They're having a 150-year celebration at the Kirkwood Inn, starting at noon today, so. If you're not in a hurry-
I'm sorry, they want this meeting going sooner. They're saying it's at 11.
Just for, since you're up here.
And the rumor is they have some of the original food still available. I'm sure it's just a rumor.
Yeah, I hope so, yeah.
I won't tell Scott.
You never know. Some beef jerky.
Yeah, no, that'd be fun.
Yeah, I was
So I
going to
think
say
we'll move
maybe
on to-
some port bed, you know, now we might have something there. Anything else, Michael?
No, that
Before
was
you-
perfect, and I look
Thank
forward
you.
to working with you on these other.
All right, well, I think we're going to mosey down the road here a little bit. I have a daughter headed up to Humboldt that I have to get her packed up today and tomorrow, so we're renting the U-Haul trailer today. That will be an experience. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm gonna give you some stuff out here.
So moving to 8F, discussion and possible action regarding the district's snow removal services operation with 2 subbullets. Michael, you want to proceed?
Sure. Slide, that's what a real winter looks like.
Right, haven't seen one for a while.
So that was when our RPM was brand new. At the July 6th, 2014 meeting, Keith Meyer asked why the G&A allocation for snow removal had increased. I talked directly to Keith, and we talked about this in operations capital. Because of the potential for increased traffic with Alpine Smith leaving the valley, we anticipated that our G&A expense would also increase, so we actually increased our G&A. The business volume will also increase, so it'll be a good thing to spread out the the cost among the members, but that is why we increased that cost. And that has been explained to the owners that brought that up. Before you today on page 75 in your packet is the projected expenses and contract amounts for the 2014-15 proposed snow removal services. The top section shows what we would like to go out. It basically is no change in our contract amounts for existing contracts, and basically no change for contracts that we're going to send out contracts to that we did not have last year. So with that, we are looking for board approval to send these contracts out and move forward.
We considered it the finance.
Right, the finance committee reviewed all this and recommended approval.
Any comments, questions from the board? I'd like to see it adding $100,000 of revenue. That's good. Any other $100,000 of profitable revenue you can find, that'd be good.
That seems good.
Any comments or questions from the audience? Nancy, go ahead.
So with the homeowners associations that aren't involved and that you send the contracts out to, do you actually do some kind of proactive effort to ask to go before their boards to present the information? What kind of, what do you do to be able to hopefully get that contract?
Good question. So we send out what I would, an introduction letter showing not only what the amount would be, but what the amount would have been should they have joined our contract due to our, we have a contract amount, as you know, which offers a refund. If it's a big year, there's not an additional expense. It is a cost for the association. So we actually show how much they would have saved if they've been the district, which is very, which has been a good thing the last couple of years because we've had low years. But then again, in 2010-11, we didn't charge any more, even though we had a huge year. We also, after we send out these contracts, district staff actually contacts the presidents of each of the associations and asks them what their intentions are and why we think they should go with the district. So we are proactive.
I guess my reaction would be is, if it doesn't turn out as favorable as we hope it is, that, next, and I know summertime's busy, the homeowners weekend, but you try to get on their agenda. That's kind of what KMA's been trying to do, is kind of get out ahead of it, to try to understand it instead of being reactionary. Just a FYI thought.
It's a good comment because I know in our association, snow removal is what, 2/3 of the cost?
At least 70%, yeah, something like that.
So maybe leading with your July 4th rounds with a little bit of a sales pitch. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll make a motion that we approve the contracts on page, whatever page it is. 75.
I'll abstain second.
All in favor, Andy?
Indeed, aye.
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Dorber guy?
Abstain aye.
So it passes unanimously. Moving to 8G, discussion and possible approval of agreements to pursue Caples Lake water rights with the State Water Board. Manager Sharp.
District staff has made presentations to EID, Alpine, and Amador counties, Vail, and the Forest Service regarding the proposed project to perfect the district's right to use water from Caples Lake for domestic purposes. The idea would be to file a water rights application with the state, and then eventually, when needed, construct a treatment plant at well number 2 and actually draw water from Caples using the Vail snowmaking line for transportation. On pages 76 through 89 in your packet are proposals from Wagner and Bonsignor for $21,000 and RCI for $4,200. The filing fee for the state is $10,000. An additional expense would be for General Counsel Dick Shanahan to review and approve the application and any correspondence needed. Staff is looking for board approval to pursue the water rights application with a budget of $50,000.
So the planning committee has considered this. Does Bob or Eric have any?
I'll let Bob go and then.
Yes, we've been talking about this for quite some time, of course, and this is the staged approach to the topic that we feel comfortable with. I think it would be really excellent for us to move from the theory that we have some claim on water rights and cables to having it actually perfected as a right, and therefore, we'll be positioned to be able to do the hookup as Michael discussed at an appropriate time when it seems like it's the right concrete step to ensure continuity of water supply in the valley, which clearly is an extremely important resource and one we cannot be unable to command.
Yeah, and my
Also,
comment.
as a comment, the only other comment I would make is that we did figure out what we think is the right amount of water rights to ask for out of the 200. It's 200 acre feet is a lot, and we didn't see the need for that much anywhere at full build out. So we've calculated a somewhat smaller figure, which will be the basis for our claim.
Which is 130.
Eric.
Yeah, I mean, what I keep asking about, and I know Michael is aware, we'll do a very good job of this, but I just want to say that for something that, where the right, the central claim, I mean, the right has already been established by court settlement, even though we have to still go through a process, I keep thinking that $50,000 is a lot of money just to go through the bureaucratic process of getting the final thing. And I know that there are steps, I know there are things we have to do, but just to give you a sense of scale, I looked this stuff up because I was curious. I mean, cable's volume capacity is 21,580 acre feet. Its surface area is 620 acres. We're going to be trying to claim 130 acre feet, which if cables is full, that represents about 1/2 of 1% of the volume of the lake. So in the proposal, one of the proposals, it talks about probably having to go further into studies about whether or not the lake could actually even supply this amount of water, et cetera, which to me just seems a little crazy. But anyway, Michael understands, I mean, his natural way of doing things anyway is just to make sure we're not spending money that we don't have to spend on studies that really are not necessary.
So I have a couple of questions. I mean, our rights aren't any less secure 10 years from now than today that we know of. So why the timing now, and how would this get paid for? Are we charging this out of the rate structure, or how would this get covered?
The fees,
Yeah.
$50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a budget under our capital plan for water rights, and would come out of our general fund.
So this is not an expense item, it's a capital?
Well, as long as it turns into a capital item, it can be part of a capital problem. So it'll be kept in a work in progress until it actually becomes the project.
Okay.
So you can pay for a study as long as it becomes a project. If it does not, if suddenly our wells are sufficient, then it would have to be expensed over time.
Yeah, and the reason why now is because we've known for some time that the biggest potential impediment to our growth is water, is the water supply. And now that we're in a third dry year, we don't know what's going to happen. And if it continues on like this for several more years, we don't know what's going to happen to our aquifer and our wells. So we just want to be prepared to act when we have to act.
Okay.
But we don't want.
And I would also add to that I think that the timeline to get our water rights perfected is certainly unclear to me. I don't think it's knowable. And my intuition tells me that anything in this space, regardless of Eric, your comments consistently stated that you think this, a little thing and that it's already within the context of something that's been legally decided and so on. My intuition tells me that it ain't that simple.
Yeah.
And I would be pleasantly surprised if it took us less than several years to get through the wickets here.
Is this proposal from Wagner and Bonsignori, is that a fixed price proposal, or is it a time and materials?
I think it's a time and material with a cost not to exceed.
Yeah. I was just surprised that they billed us for services to date. You know, usually lawyers seeking business do the upfront work without billing you, I think. But,
Yeah, they actually participated in a conference with the state board,
okay.
and which went extremely well. In fact, Kathy with their office, their executive director, felt that our application was, quote, extremely strong. So, and then she had to check herself and say, have I ever used those words before? And so I think we have a good chance of getting the application through, and hopefully for less than the budget amount.
Any other comments, questions from the board or the audience on this matter? So your recommendation and the recommendation of the planning committee is for approval of this?
Yes, I think it's, for all the reasons the planning committee just came up with, I think it's prudent that we secure these rights, especially with the drought conditions that we're in.
So I'd like to move approval of these two contracts to secure our water rights.
If I could rephrase, we need a budget that would also encompass the.
$50,000.
Yes, yes.
I'll second it. All in favor, Andy?
Andy, aye.
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Norberg, aye.
Epstein, aye.
So we've deferred on 8H, which is statement number 620. And we'll move to 8I, which is discussion and possible approval of the purchase of a wood chipper. Manager Sharp. There we go, pictures.
Thanks to a very successful wine tasting barbecue where the district raised approximately $30,000, the district is in a position to purchase the chipper and offer this community service this fall. As pictured, staff recommends the purchase of a Bearcat chipper, which would be attached to a trackless machine. This gives the chipper added power and maneuverability. Staff recommends the 8-inch version. Means you could actually put in an 8-inch log into this, but we would never do that. The largest piece would be probably around 3 inches or less. But it is a beefy machine. There's confusion on the invoice in your packet. It shows $20,000. That's actually for both models. We're only recommending one of the two. Our staff recommends the 8-inch version and the adapter for a total cost of $12,919.90.
I'm sure the barbecue committee will appreciate that all the extra money they raise is going to go to legal fees for the planning committee.
It's for water, though.
Well, let's see. Any questions, comments from the board?
The operations committee recommends purchasing this piece of equipment.
Comments, questions from the audience? Nancy Trevette, frequent commenter.
So I have a question regarding the excess funds then, and I don't know whether this is the right place to address this, because the community understood that the money that was going to be raised was going to go for the chipper, and now that that's about half, what kind of communication back is going to the community and or those donors to let them know that, what's the outcome and where are those funds going to be used? Because I don't see them being pushed into the fire department, and it seems like those are restricted funds for the item that was identified.
Michael?
Thank you. So definitely need to communicate back to the community on exactly what we purchased and what we'll be doing with that purchase. And I think that the donations that were received were, specifically targeted towards a chipper, while the balance of the funds that were raised, like the entry fee into the event itself, were not specifically, to a chipper. They were specifically to the fire department. So this was discussed, These funds are earmarked towards the fire department fund. We do classify and keep that fund separate, and those funds are spent only through authorization for the board. They're not spent on operations, they're spent on capital purchases.
No attorneys will be paid with this money.
And no
Good.
water
This
attorneys
might-
will be paid by this money. So the balance of the funds will go into the, what's a designated restricted account called the Fire Department Equipment Fund. And we are now looking for super ideas for the next donation item to give a spark into next year's purchase, whether it be a ladder truck or whatever it might be, a powered gurney, I've heard, all sorts of things, so.
So can I make a, go ahead. Sure. So just, I would encourage, because I have a background in financial development, I would encourage the district, because they're always looking for ways to fund the fire department, to, what I'm trying to say, massage the restrictions regarding it can only go towards capital. Because people who are aware of a financial need, say for the fire department, that it can support its operations and the growth that the fire department needs. I think that, we're kind of splitting hairs here, but I guess I would just encourage that.
In terms of informing the community, I believe that the newsletter contained an article which said that the excess funds would go back to the fire department coffers.
But just to a follow-up from that, because I have family members who are not part of the district, and that it's just, you can't communicate enough. Even, if you thank someone, I would encourage you to let people know what you really did. And although the newsletter is a good vehicle, not all your donors are on that distribution list.
So you're thinking about a follow-up letter, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Funders in general, whether they're individuals, big foundations, the state, or whatever, everybody likes to know, did you do what you said you were going to do? And if you did something different, tell us, because when you come back to ask again, they're more likely to open up their pocketbooks, and maybe they'll open it up even bigger.
Right. Good idea. A letter's a good idea. I know there are a couple $1,000 donors on there, including the Cobb Family Foundation. So, moving on to, actually, you're looking for a motion to approve that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dornberg moves to approve the purchase of the chipper as described.
Rickard seconds.
All in favor? Andy?
Andy, aye.
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Dornberg, aye?
Epstein, aye.
Go ahead, Michael.
And I would also like the board to reaffirm our position that staff will complete the use of this machine as a community service and at no charge to the community, and track our hours for budgeting purposes. In the past, we've contracted this work with Alpine County, Amador County, and other people have done it. And I don't want to just assume, so I'd like the board to reaffirm that we're going to go out there and do the chipping program using district staff and this at no charge to the community. We'll track that and we'll come back to operations capital, let you know what that costs for a season, and we'll budget for it appropriately. But there's a lot of excitement out there. I think we'll have a lot of chipping to do, which is a good thing, defensible space and everything, but I want to reaffirm that we're doing this at no charge.
Right, this is part of the fire service.
Right.
And I'll leave the issue alone, but that in and of itself is another good thing to be able to tell all your donors, to tell the community. That's wonderful. That's great.
So we'll put that in our communications too.
Right.
I think it's the consensus of the board that we'll do it for free and track our hours, and I'd love to know the costs in general, meaning bring it back to the board, not just the operations and capital.
I will.
And you'll tell everybody when we're going to do this, early September, right?
We'll change our procedure. We'll have a date that, we'll start doing it all the time.
Okay.
You know, I mean, once we get this, we would like to eliminate the piles of brush along the side of the roads that have, you know, that are all over there right now. If you go look around, you know, there's piles of brush. So we'll do this as we see the need. You know, as soon as we have a need, we'll get rid of it. We have a lot of brush on our property, on public property, that we'd like to get rid of as well. So, so we will put a date out as far as please get it done for this because of weather, but we'll do this on a continual basis.
I guess as a follow-up, there's, you know, we've described exactly what we can and cannot chip, but the public is, you know, there's a human factor there. Are we making provisions to remove items that are too big to chip rather than just leaving them and disappointing the community? I mean, are we going to have a dumpster designated and do hauling? Or, I mean, I don't know. What is the plan? Rick, you want to address that? Or?
Yeah, I can. I think this is it's going to be a program that's going to work with good relationships with the HOAs, the homeowners, but it should be limited for the first year just to chipping. I think if we get into a hauling situation, the amount of time that's going to be involved for people bringing debris down the side of the road may overwhelm us. So I think if we follow the consistent pattern that we've had last few years where we chip anything that's 6 inches or less, that's chippable, it's not wood chips or willows and things that'll clog the machines or small debris, and then communicate with the homeowner, hey, this is the reason why we can't remove this, and provide them with names of contractors that can do the work, and educate the public and the stakeholders of what the program's about and what it's for. Now, if the board decides at a later date to enhance the program and provide other services like debris removal, log removal, then we certainly can go through the committee and come to the board for that request. But for this year, I think we should keep it to the bare minimum and mirror the programs that we've had in the past.
The reason I bring it up is because I've seen some of these files. And so we're going to just inform the homeowner that we can remove that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I've run the door-to-door chipper program in Bear Valley for 10 years, and yes, people do not follow instructions. And there's duff and pine needles
Right.
and rocks, and they put it there and then they're gone. So sometimes you do have to have another method of getting rid of that other material, and the bark, lots of bark.
No, because it's too soft, right, the bark? Yeah, Bob was asking about
It jams it up. And then obviously the rocks.
Well, right, yeah.
People put rocks in there and sometimes they don't see it, and it does cause a
Sure.
problem.
I mean, we're kind of, you know, we've encouraged people to create this protective barrier around their houses, so it's, if they're over enthusiastic, but they've created this protective barrier, I think we need to offer them a little bit of relief, maybe compromise a little bit, maybe at the end of the season. I don't know, it's just some food for thought.
I would think the staff can manage that.
Okay.
And if it's not a big deal, we can certainly get rid of it, and if it becomes a big deal, then we'll come back to the board and ask for direction, but we can manage through this.
Okay.
Good, great. So turning to 8J, discussion possible approval of general manager objectives for 2014-15. I noticed Manager Sharp is not listed as the person to present his objectives, so I guess I'll do it. These are on page 108 and 109. They've been, I guess, circulated for a while now. They're based on all the committee's input as well as input from members of the community, including both Cheryl and Nancy, who provided comments. Any comments at the board level, or any comments that you'd like to make, Michael?
Good.
I have a comment, which is that I'd like to propose a change in 8 under capital and operating projects. We raised $31,000 for the
July 4th fundraising, and actually I'd like to propose two changes. One is to say July 4th, 2015 annual barbecue. I mean, I know it's 4 or 5 days after the fiscal year ends, but, you know, all the work happens during fiscal 15 for the July 4th, 2015 barbecue. And secondly, is to change the number. I'm told by fundraising experts that the bar only goes up, and that if you raise 31,000, you should have an objective that's higher than that. I don't mean to be too soft, but I would probably change it to $20,000. And the difference would be, if we were to split the difference between last year's objectives and the 31, it'd be about 20. What would it be? 22,500.
Yeah, I think the only thing then is, gets to what Nancy was saying earlier. What this says is $15,000 for a dedicated project. It's not the total amount that we also wanted. I mean, you know, so if we want the total amount, we should put the total amount in and take out the for dedicated project. So it's just a.
And I guess I would recommend that you don't even put the figure in there, that you don't put the figure in there, but you say a percentage, so that you're not focused on a particular number, but it's a percentage over what your expectations are, so that you don't just get stuck, you know, or, and I'm not alleging, or whatever you want to say, that Michael's and his volunteer group or the staff are only going to work to that number, but they're working, you know, towards a percentage over what it was last year. So, or whatever that is.
If
That
it's
may
a
be too
percentage
technical.
over last year, the number really goes up. Cheryl, do you have some comments? I think the committee, at least, and I'm not saying I disagree, I think the committee has been focused on raising a dollar amount.
That's correct.
What are your thoughts, or you're on the barbecue and committee?
I guess my first comment is that I don't know that it should be focused on a specific item. I think it should be broader for the benefit of the fire department, you know, because the fire department needs big things, so it may be an incremental thing, you know, year over year, that money goes towards something, and I don't know what those somethings are. And I guess my other sort of cautionary comment is while the fundraising folks on the barbecue committee would certainly like to do better each year and improve in the results, I think this was a pretty unique year because the item that we were asking for funds for really resonated with the people that were donating, and I'm not so sure that that's always going to be the case. So, so I don't want to put a damper on the objectives for Michael, because we had an exceptional year, I mean, without a doubt. So I would be more comfortable with the figure that you used, the 20-ish, 22,000 or whatever, than saying increase it over the 31,000. I don't think that that's reasonable. That's my personal opinion.
I do think Eric's comment is right, which is maybe we should change it to whatever the dollar amount is for the benefit of the Kirkwood Volunteer Fire Department. And the reason I say that is I had the same question Nancy had, which you can tell from my comments, which is where does the excess go? I'm glad to hear it stays in the fire department in a dedicated fund. Rick?
Just one more comment. Yeah, one of this year's big successes was that we received the funding from the ECHO program from Vail, the largest stakeholder. If for some reason, and we have since applied for next year's funding cycle as well, but if for some reason they pull back or that changes, then our cost for this event will significantly go up, maybe $10,000 or more. So just for the boards.
Then you better get started early.
Yes, sir.
So then I'd like to propose, just to follow up on Standish, on all these comments, that this goal read, plan and execute Camp Beauty signature and annual community and fundraising July 4th, 2015 barbecue, and raise at least $22,500 to benefit the Kirkwood Volunteer Fire Department.
So you're upping the ante. Anybody have a
Well, I
view?
heard Cheryl say that, so I'm going along with it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
How do you feel about the 22,500?
Well, I actually have the date as 2014. I thought I'd already succeeded in this goal.
Good point.
But, yeah, I accept the challenge.
Okay, it's to benefit the Kirkwood Volunteer Fire Department. And you're making that motion?
Yes. And I would move that we approve these goals with that change. Mrs. Rickert.
I'll second that. Andy, how do you vote?
NDI.
Rickert, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Member Carr?
Abstain, aye.
So that one passes. So moving to 8K, presentation and possible action regarding the Meadow Trail survey results. Manager Sharp.
Yeah. Cheryl's going to do this. We're going to do this by paper again. We're having technical difficulties. We did pass out the most recent survey, so they do have, besides Bob, everyone has the most recent. Bob knows this very well, so they'll be looking at the paper.
What are the technical difficulties? Is it a question of firing up Acrobat and word packet on a box? Or?
No, it's a little bit more difficult. Every time I switch between applications, it has a communication error between the TV and I can't get back in. So we will get it repaired before the next meeting.
Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you. I think everybody in the room knows about the Meadow Trail system and the trail that was developed prior to homeowner weekend. With the June billing statements, we sent out a survey to all the ratepayers, and we received 135 responses to that survey. And I think it's important to note that of the people that responded, 90% of them reported that they visit the Meadow Trail in the summer. So these were people that are aware of the conditions and so forth of the trail. So their responses are much appreciated. So as to the opinions about the demonstration trail, there were, as I said, 135 responses, and 105 of the people responded as to how they felt about the demonstration trail. 69% of those people had actually visited the trail. 38 people actually liked what they saw. 16 thought the trail would be an improvement over what exists today, and 24 thought it was okay. And there were 37 people that were not pleased with the demonstration trail, but that means that 65% of the people, responded to the fact that the demonstration trail was an improvement. They were kind of specific in their comments in that they said they liked it for parts of the trail, like the access points, where people were going into and out of the meadow. They liked the wider trail. And the respondents on this question did check more than one response. So if you're actually looking at the thing, you'll see that it doesn't add up to the 100%. It's over that. And then 84 people actually provided written comments about the trail, and these were classified as to favorable and unfavorable. And they said huge improvement, old trail is much too narrow and overgrown. Perhaps just a trail built to Forest Service standards would suffice. And there were a lot of comments that we really needed something to cross the stream in one or more places. The negative comments focused on the fact that it was too formal, that it was overbuilt. They preferred that the meadow stay in its natural state, and they were concerned that it would be too expensive to build and maintain. The next slide focuses on the conditions of the existing trail in the meadow. And here, obviously, we were focused on, not on the demonstration trail, but how people perceive the trail that's in the meadow. So there were 126 people who responded to this, and they could check any and all that applied. Only 28 people said that the trail was perfect, thereby suggesting that there's definitely room for improvement. So 57% said it needs improvement, 30% found the trail very difficult to follow in some places, 24% stated that the trail was too narrow. And the muddiness of the trail was an issue for another 23%.
These are the existing trails?
Yeah. And then that 38% again stated that not being able to cross from one side of the valley to the other was an issue for them and their family. And then we asked them to specify what improvements might be made to improve the trail. And a number of people in a separate question, 63% said that they strongly favored a stream crossing that would go from one side of the valley to the other. And in their comments, they were, what type of stream crossing was an issue. Is it a permanent bridge? Is it a log? Is it some stepping stone? So the issue of having a way to cross the stream was important to a lot of people, but there were various opinions as to how to accomplish that. Some people just said to add some boards in the places in the meadow that are muddy. More trail definition to the trail on the west side of the meadow was cited as a need for improvement. It's really hard to follow. And then flatten or even out the trail in the areas where it's rutted. And people wanted to improve the erosion control of the trail. And then the issue, of course, of rerouting the trail off of private property needs to be addressed. And then a number of people mentioned that portions of the trail should be ADA compliant. So then we asked about where do you go to access the trail? And 93% of the people indicated that they walk to the meadow from their home. So only 5% of the people are actually driving someplace and parking, which I found sort of interesting. And the places where they indicate that they access the trail would be from Highway 88 near the Cross Country Center, near the playground or the tennis courts, and then from the area between Base Camp and Sun Meadows. And then we asked for open-ended comments about other suggested access points. And the popular ones were the KCA Recreation Center general store area, certainly near the KMPUD buildings here, from the playground. Others favored access from both of the roads that go into KMA, and then off the junction off of Highway 88 and Kirkwood Meadows Drive. So then we asked them about parking, if they thought that was an issue. And they wanted the trail access points to be developed where there was already existing parking, public parking. And as an example, in the winter, a lot of people park near the community service building and begin their cross-country journey in the meadow. And so that's an area that could be adapted as well for summer use easily. And then the people responding from KMA and East Meadows were not really too interested in having people access the meadow by parking on their roads. So that's important. The subject of use of the trail by horseback riders or mountain bikes and so forth has come up in almost all discussions about the Meadow Trail system. So we asked about that. 58% prefer that bicycles not be allowed on the Meadow Trail, and 50% also prefer that horses not be allowed on the Meadow Trail.
Real consensus.
Yeah. And then we were interested in finding out, who was actually responding and what's their history in Kirkwood. And 51% of the respondents had owned property in Kirkwood for more than 15 years. Another 24% for 11 to 15 years. So these are people that really, that know Kirkwood and are probably certainly familiar with the meadow. And 40% of the respondents own condominiums and 37% own single-family homes. So in the planning meeting this past week, we focused on sort of what the next steps might be for this particular project, if there is to be a project. And I guess before I go into that, I should, we asked if people wanted to volunteer to help with this effort, and 23% said that they would be interested in helping. And then we had another 35%, which said maybe I might be able to help. So we were pretty encouraged by that, because that seems like a good pool of about 70-plus people that might be willing to work on the project. So the next steps, basically suggest that the trail needs some improvement. And so the way that we might go about that is certainly to clarify the KMPUD's role in this effort, that this isn't a KMPUD project per se, but the KMPUD is simply a catalyst, to support the community and the stakeholders. I should clarify who the stakeholders are if anyone is not clear. It would be Vail Resorts, of course, the Kirkwood Community Association, and Kirkwood Resort Development, plus the PUD. So the next step would involve, I think, convening a meeting with the stakeholders and getting agreement on the concept, and discuss some financing options for how we might jointly proceed on this. We need to develop a plan to address the property line issues. We need to, regularly communicate to the community about what's going on with the project and solicit involvement. We need to examine access points, which ones make sense, which ones have proximity to parking and those kinds of things. The team would need to focus on portions of the trail for ADA compliance, where that might make most sense. That may be on private property, such as the area around the community service buildings. And then at some point next year, perhaps construct a trail on either side of the demonstration trail according to Forest Service standards, so that perhaps before the barbecue next year, people could take another look at that and we could solicit some more feedback. And then we'd also like to take a look at what maintenance issues might surface as a result of the winter season to the demonstration trail, and have a better idea of the expenses to maintain and those kinds of things. And then explore options for stream crossings, what works, and so forth. And then, of course, continued discussions with the community. Questions, comments?
Thank you for that great summary. Any questions or comments from the board?
Well, I'd certainly like to comment further. Thanks to Cheryl for taking the ball on the writing of the survey, with Jeff Smith joining in afterwards, and the communications committee gets kudos for doing a very organized job of getting this out to the community and pulling together the responses. I think, what we're looking for here was some centers of gravity, if you will, of community opinion, and I think we've found several. We didn't find everything lined up by any means, but I think, the few things that kind of jumped out at me as sort of, the tenor of the community was a desire to have a Forest Service type trail, something similar than what we had in mind when we did the demonstration trail. The stream crossing thing would be another example. From one side of the valley to the other, those got a lot of traction, and the fact that basically improvements are needed in the majority of the respondents. I think that those things came through and were helpful to us in trying to think through what it makes sense to do as we just try to figure this out. So
I have two comments. One is, I saw Linda Draculich last night. She's one of the property owners that the trail goes on. She is very open to discussion. They're very aware of the issue, and I think they said that somebody was coming to see them in Reno to discuss it. And I don't know if that's a PUD representative?
No, it's
Peter Forsch.
Peter Forsch, I believe.
And she basically said that it's always been on our property, and so we're happy to discuss it. We'd like it off our property. Then the second one is, I think at the last meeting, Eric, you made a statement which was that, hey, this is not like the electricity
project where we're responsible for all the funding, and it gets highlighted here, and I just, for the record, agree with it. It's important to understand that this is not a PUD project. PUD's role is to serve as a catalyst to benefit the community and stakeholders, which include Vail, KCA, and Kirkwood Resort Development, as well as the PUD. So after thinking about your comments and Bertrand's comments, and the fact that a lot of these trails lie on property that we don't own or control, until convinced otherwise, 100% agree with what you said at the last meeting. So with that, I'd open it up to the audience for any comments. Nancy?
And most of these comments I've shared at the planning committee meeting, and just so that you can all hear them. I mean, this particular issue remains on the KMA's board agenda every time we meet. It's a constant discussion. There are individual homeowners who do have concern that...
I'm sorry, could we get Nancy closer to a microphone for this?
You need to come up here.
Yeah, come on up and
one of these mics. It's one of these microphones.
Hello? Can you...
It's
Okay.
you need to come up to one of the satellites.
Yeah, you can talk.
Okay,
Chair.
so, thank you. Feels awkward. That the Meadow Trail remains on KMA's homeowners board of directors agenda every time we meet. It's something that it's of great interest to KMA. That individual property owners are concerned about it, whose property fronts on the where this trail could go. That there already exists some, I guess you could call it trespass onto property owners off of Wintergreen, and people aren't overlooking that. And all of a sudden, I've lost my train of thought.
Well, why is it a regular agenda item on KMA's board? And is it because KMA is concerned about it, or is it because KMA would like to see it happen, or is there not a consensus?
I don't think there's a consensus on it, and because we came in so late regarding it and we didn't have the bigger picture on it, I think as time goes by and KMA can feel more comfortable about it, where it's going, where it's heading, are there financial impacts? Will it stay off people's personal property? And I think the other thing is I don't think it's widely known that KMA owns not an individual homeowner, but KMA, the Homeowners Association, owns property not only going down Kirkwood Meadows Drive, but also that goes down the meadow. And so that is the other reason why KMA's antennas are up.
Okay. So it's on KMA property, is what you're saying?
I don't think it's clear, and I think what was expressed at the planning committee meeting is when it gets closer to the time to be able to say, this is where we think this is going, and this is where we are assuming that this is going to be placed, that story poles be put up so that people can get that visual. Just an aside from all of this, I mean, KMA is currently in discussions with whomever owns the school site over here, and we've requested story poles, and so, it's because not only, everybody sees things differently, there's, different ways that we learn or understand pieces of information. So that's the other reason why.
Well, so I don't know all the background and everything else, but representing the district, I'd be more than delighted to have some other entity take the lead and ask us to do stuff. So I don't know if others share that feeling, but that would be just fine with me.
Staff recommends that.
Well, I think it would be fine with me too, but I don't see anybody else picking up the ball, so that's why I think we're in there in the catalyst role. If as we talk through this with other stakeholders, if somebody else wants to take the lead on it, I would also be very happy with that, but so far ain't seen it.
So that might be part of our communications our catalyst role is to try to pull together opinions and some rough ideas of what could be done and what the issues are. And having completed that, we're now looking
Right.
what's the appropriate entity to lead this and ask us to do stuff on their behalf. I think that's our position.
Yeah, and let's face it, this is Vail property we're talking about. So, I mean, I think that they will have to take the lead, I think.
And I know I've expressed this to Michael, I think at our general meeting. there is a cost to the district that you've already expended, and every time staff has to deal with this, or the board is dealing with, there's a cost to you all, and in a sense, there's a cost to every ratepayer out there.
Sure.
And, yeah, there's a lot of people who are benefiting, but there's other people out there, other bigger entities that have deeper pockets.
I have one other question, Michael, which is, I think you and I received an email asking whether it was even permissible to do a trail system on the meadow which has a conservation easement. Do we know the answer? Do you know the answer to that question?
Yeah, so it's controlled by, it is owned by Vail. It's controlled by North American Land Trust.
Right.
Who are supportive of meadow trails and supportive of recreational activities and supportive of trails that, trails actually are an environmental aspect because you don't have people walking off the trail, they try to stay on it. So, so I think that the land trust that controls the meadow is in support of a trail system.
And Standish, if I'm beginning to learn that if you ever have a question regarding anything in Kirkwood, you go to the specific plan, and this is addressed in the specific plan.
So what does it say about this?
It's, yeah, it's called for, it's called out there for it.
Okay.
So, as a next step item, I think one of the next step, we meet on a regular basis, staff meets with Vail on a regular basis. And we should keep this on the agenda as far as, you know, what the survey results were, and, you know, if they have any incentive to move forward on any sort of a meadow trail system. But as far as the district itself as being, you know, I look at work to be done on public lands. And so if we could do, as Cheryl mentioned, a U.S. Forest Service, you know, demonstration trail per se, and extend that maybe possibly around the district on public lands, I think that's a community service at a very low cost using, you know, volunteers, and continuing the emphasis on areas that we control and own, and beautifying public lands, which I think is also on our charter. So that would be a next step the board might consider.
Plus, it's a
And
neutral
develop
point
on
of
that a little
entry.
bit, Michael, not to put words in your mouth, but I think we talked about having a well-defined, well-executed access point on the community services building property as part of what you're describing.
Over here. So as Cheryl mentioned,
We could put. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Michael.
a lot of people actually park on district land, public property, now to access the meadow in the winter time, and to actually define that parking area rather than having them park on the side of Loop Road, but actually, you know, bring back a proposal to create some parking spots and maintain those parking spots for public parking to access the meadow at this public area might be something the board would consider as well. I think it'd be really classy, actually.
I would support exploration of work on a cost-effective, ideally volunteer basis on property that the district owns and controls. Agreed. So I think you have.
Okay, so we'll come back with a proposal of that type, and I think you know we have to get that in.
Maybe you should hang that up.
I don't know if we should hang it up.
No, he's
Just
gonna
turn
call
it
back.
down.
He lost.
Obviously disconnected from and it's probably well aware of the situation.
He's not getting much feedback, except over the internet.
Right.
Thank goodness it's the Beatles.
In the interest of time, we can come back to that. If that's all right. Why don't we go to general manager reports? You've got 8 of them. And you're covering for Brandy and Jill, so Michael, the floor is all yours.
Weather has certainly been interesting in Kirkwood over the last month. As the slide above demonstrates, we had a thunderstorm in Kirkwood, which deposited most of the mountain on the deck right before about a week before the wildflower test.
Sunday before the wildflower.
Yeah, so it was a big effort to clean that up, and I attended the wildflower. I thought you guys did a nice job, and there was no evidence of this down deluge during the time. This is not winter in Kirkwood. This is a hailstorm that happened. Amazing hailstorm. Were you here at the time?
When was that?
It's on the 20th.
I think it was the 20th.
Was it the
yeah.
20th?
Yeah, it was an amazing hailstorm, and it actually made the entire area white. So at the last board meeting, we approved vacuum breakers for the tanks so that we could drain the tanks and be able to inspect them as required by the Department of Health Services. During the investigation of this $14,500 project, district staff came up with a different idea of actually installing the vacuum breakers interior and saving a ton of money. And this is proven out that we would be able to do this. So instead of creating vaults in these vacuum breakers, we're actually going to put these vacuum breakers indoors and spend about $2,000 and bring this project in-house. So that's a positive. The Loop Road project, I'm pleased to announce that the construction of the phase 2 of the Loop Road project is complete. We've gone from Renwick to the vaporizer building. The next phase is to go from there up to the oil switch, but we still need to investigate the propane portion of this project to ensure that the propane portion will actually work and is viable. We still would like to get this project done, but we need to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row before we put a backhoe in the ground. So, more to come. So that's the Loop Road. One of the items that the board talked about is providing security around the propane tanks. We went out for a bid on that for $17,000 to put a chain link fence around the propane tanks. This needs more further investigation as far as maintaining a chain link fence in our area. An idea was brought up at Operations Capital to actually look for a bid for block, which might be longer lasting. Also, with chain link, we'd have to maintain it. So this is a difficult area. So instead of bringing this back, we're going to look at this a bit more. Pleased to announce that the wine tasting barbecue was a great success. I'd like to thank the wine tasting committee, Cheryl and Ann and Sandy and everybody that... Carolyn, sorry, for all the hard work that they did. Also the Vail Resorts made a significant contribution. The volunteers, and especially I would like to thank Rick Ansel, did a huge effort, very successful accomplishment, and I would just like to publicly thank you for all your work on that.
Yes, thank you very much, Cheryl.
So that he doesn't rest on his laurels for too long, we have the Death Ride was also successful. He was managed the aid station up at Caples, at the pass here at Carson Pass, and we received a $1,000 check. So thanks again. And there's the plaque. A couple of future events. One is we've had a request to possibly move the start time for the November board meeting from 8 o'clock to 1 p.m. I'd like to bring that before. That would change the nature of the meeting from a regular meeting to a special meeting, which is the noticing requirement. Staff is fine whatever time the board decides.
I'd be happy with one.
It's fine by me. I'm good with it.
Bob's not here to talk.
No problem for me. Oh, there he is.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, I'm back.
So the consensus is to do that.
Great, so we'll move the starting time for the November board meeting from 8 o'clock to 1 p.m. And we'll call that a special meeting. Another future event, you recognize those guys. When we started the Out Valley project, we painted some shovels gold and had an event at the wine tasting. And there's been a suggestion to have a similar event when the project actually goes live. Given the construction progress, and it actually goes live when scheduled, a possible idea would be to have a celebration after the next board meeting. It would be small, possibly video it so that it could be placed on the website, and just have a closure of this item. We could invite, I would keep it relatively small because I don't think you're going to get a lot of homeowner participation on the November board meeting at 1 o'clock. So I would keep it small, but just to have some sort of a celebration to, basically say that it's over, just flip the switch, whatever. And then possibly invite specific people, the Howard Barnes, the Michelle Gambles, to our holiday party in December to thank them individually for their contributions to the project.
Well, are we going to actually flip the switch in front of a live audience, or will that happen behind the scenes?
It'll happen behind the scenes.
We could have a fake switch. But
Yeah. Have a face.
Comments from the board on that approach?
Well, in the big construction projects that I've been involved with in the past, normally there's something a little bit more substantial for for the people who are out in the field and doing the work and the designers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, it just doesn't seem quite substantial enough, a thank you, or having people here to say thank you at the November board meeting. I hesitate to suggest this because it's, takes up a Saturday evening, but since the board meeting starts at 1 and probably won't be done until 4 or 5, I would certainly be supportive of a dinner of some sort that would include the main, representatives of the contractors and engineers and RCI, et cetera. I don't know how big that gets, but something like that would be more consistent with what I've experienced.
Maybe have something done in the Carson Valley.
Yeah, Eric.
We're going to be here,
Well, maybe more for the contractors, an awful lot of them are from that area. You could rent a facility, probably, well, I don't know, it's just a thought.
I think having to be on the site where it occurred is makes sense. They certainly know how to find.
we can set up banquet tables in the dirt room right next to the.
There you go, do that.
But just something like that. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but just something a little bit more substantial to say thank you. Given what they've accomplished is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will comment that the next day you get an extra hour's sleep anyway. Because it's the daylight savings time.
Another thing that sometimes works instead of a full dinner, if, is what the terminology is, heavy hors d'oeuvres.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'd support that expansion. Although my official policy has been to not communicate on celebration until we get a PG&E contract signed. We're running out of time, so we might have the celebration before the contract.
I don't think you'd allow that.
Great.
So maybe we could check with the KCA, you do something on the Mountain Club deck, do heavy hors d'oeuvres, which probably be done in-house. I don't know if anything is actually open in that time of year. Would the public be invited? Would we put this in the newsletter and say, or that's kind of tough until you know that it's on?
Yeah, for this kind of thing that I'm thinking of is not necessarily inviting the public. This is really the board thanking those who were directly involved in the project. It's that thank you. Then there could be some other kind of interesting, like public celebration, like that at some point, maybe at New Year's or something.
Yeah, especially given the time of year, I don't think we should invite the public. unless we have to or should do the Brown Act or whatever.
Not unless you discuss business, which I hope you're done with by then.
So do we. Great.
Great, I'll take that direction. There was a suggestion at the last board meeting that we start these meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. It's on the agenda for discussion.
Comments?
I'd be in.
Where did this suggestion come from, Michael?
At the last board meeting, a member of the public suggested that we complete this. I know that I go to Alpine County and Amador County board meetings, and they start their meetings with Pledge of Allegiances.
Can
Nancy,
we pledge
comment?
allegiance to the Department of Agriculture? I'd be more excited about that.
I'm not familiar with how other public,
This is the only one I know that doesn't do it.
oh, it is?
Yeah.
Maybe we should do it.
Yeah, the Cal EPA, that's the way the Air Resources Board does. So, we're the exception, not the norm.
Maybe we should become normal.
There's not much chance of that,
No.
ever. But,
Eric?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think it's a necessary thing to do. I know Nancy thinks it's important, that's fine. If other people think it's important, fine. I think it's I myself don't like it as a ritual. The cities of Menlo Park and Palo Alto do not do it. But I know others do, Portola Valley does. So I'm fine with it if it's important to people. To me, it's a ritual that's not very meaningful, personally.
I mean, when we take the oath of office, we pledge our allegiance to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state. It seems redundant to me, but if it's important, I'm not going to oppose it.
Bob Endy?
I have no enthusiasm for it. I would not oppose it.
That means you're the deciding vote.
Oh, I was going to second Bob Endy's proposal. No, it doesn't matter to me.
I mean, how important was it to you, Nancy? I mean, it was your
Well, I felt it was important, otherwise I wouldn't have brought it up. But there's another piece to this that I was just curious where all of you landed. But I also thought of it as a way to possibly be able to invite staff on a volunteer basis, and I know there could be problems with that, to perhaps lead the pledge, or the volunteer firefighters, just so that we as a community, as you as board members, begin to know who all these other faces are out there. These are some of those, they're very friendly people, but I wonder sometimes who I'm waving to, but, you learn to say, oh, hi, but you don't know what perhaps their role is in the district, or some of the committee members, that was the other thing I was thinking. Serve a dual purpose.
Well, that's certainly a nice thought, and I think that, there are ways of doing that. Michael's begun to do that in a way that didn't used to be done with your managers, but others can be invited to present and so on. So that's a very nice idea.
Do you want to have a guest employee each month to lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Well, that was.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, it was just a way to, some, whether it's a volunteer or a community member or an employee, some people feel more comfortable in front of a group than others do. And being able to lead the Pledge of Allegiance is pretty, people kind of know how to do that. And so it's just a way to be able to put a face to a name and ask somebody to do something very simple.
I guess I would say, in that regard, I would be more inclined to, I'm going to ask somebody to come on their day off to talk about their work and give feedback on that. I think that's a better way to it's a better way to interact, and we have done that. And I think I was part of the team that led the effort to have community involvement in all of the committee meetings, which wasn't welcomed initially, but it was worked very effectively. So I would rather engage people in activities that are, that are related to what we're doing.
I would agree with that. And
Fine
I'd
doing
like to
more of
get
that.
to know some of the people who you referred to, who frankly I waved to, and I don't feel great about that, not knowing their names, which is, I guess, my fault. So I guess the consensus is to try and get more employee and committee member exposure without doing the pledge of allegiance. Is that kind of the consensus?
Yeah, that's my.
Yeah, I mean, and I would only say that if it's important for some reason to members of the community that we do that, the pledge, I'm fine with it. But until I understand that it's somehow that ritual is important to people, I prefer not to, myself, I prefer not to do it.
Do you have a recommendation, Michael? Is that direction okay with you?
Direction's fine.
Water stage alert?
Yeah, that's a simple one, but I did want to bring that back to the committee. We are at 127 feet. Our aquifer has dropped 5 feet. That's really good news. That's not very much at all. 132 feet is when we started really addressing this issue back in May. So far so good. We'll continue to bring that back. I'm sure everyone on the board is aware that the state has passed a mandatory, they're giving the authority to water districts to fine water users that overuse. Basically, they're following the district's model of a 2 times a week watering schedule, which we've already implemented way back in May. So there's only 2 requirements of this, and that's one is that everyone go to a 2 times a week watering schedule, and that we use less water than we did in 2013. And both of those are being accomplished in the district. We had a comment at the last meeting as far as are we enforcing the specific days of usage? Thanks to the efforts of Bob Epstein, we're actually able to track water usage, and we're doing it on a much more effective basis. We track big users and what time of day they're doing it. So I think we have a good handle on it, and I don't think we should go really into the enforcement business at this point. I think it's more of a communications thing, and we are seeing a lot of people adhere to that. So
Great.
So the suggestion was made that, I think that rather than having arbitrary 2 days, voluntary, just pick 2 days of the week that you're here. With our tracking system, do you think that would be permissible?
I think at this point, it's very permissible. If we got worse and then we have to have a certain amount of water used on a certain amount of day, and then it gets into a.
So rather than saying your day is Saturday, you have 1 day on the weekend, you have a day in midweek, could we just say, just limit people to 2 days a week to water?
Yeah, I think that would be a management thing that we should just internally do. I wouldn't recommend changing the
Okay.
policy. I think we should just manage through this and talk to the individuals that might have an issue with daytime water and
Just people that are using
a lot of
just
water.
red flag people that are using a lot.
So we're talking about not enforcing a policy.
Yeah, we're not enforcing it now, we're just keeping track of it. It's more of a communications issue.
Okay.
Until we get into a situation where it's more critical.
Should we change the policy? Or you're saying don't change the policy? Just
I don't think, there's a reason that specific days work for larger, because that way you can manage your water resources on a daily basis. If everyone decided to water on Tuesdays, you're gonna have a problem. But by spreading it out over the week, just like you would with the wastewater treatment plant, you spread out your resources throughout the week, and you're able to recharge your aquifers on a daily basis.
So you're more worried about the commercial users than what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just bringing it back up. I think that the community is reacting to this very well. I don't see any further action at this point.
Okay.
I guess my one concern is if we have this, if we think we're going to be in water station alert next year, then maybe we consider amending the policy ahead of time. I'm just not wild about having a policy that, we don't enforce.
So we
I'm
could.
good with it for the rest of the year, because we're almost,
Right. We could certainly look at a water stage alert 2 that has a non-specific factor as far as the days, and then a 3 if we got more serious into it, specifying days of the week. And that would be totally workable. And if you'd like me to bring that back at a future board meeting, I can.
I kind of encourage that just because I don't like having a policy where we don't enforce it. Otherwise, people can point to it as a precedent and say, why are you enforcing another policy?
Take that direction.
You guys okay with that?
It's probably good to be consistent.
I think the main point is we have this system so we know every cubic foot and when it's used, and we can contact people the same day.
So Dave, what's up?
Right, so we can,
You're watering your car.
we can, yeah, or Peter's taking a shower, whatever. So we can do whatever we want, is we should come up with something that's convenient for people and that achieves the objective of, using only the water that we can afford to use.
Why don't you keep going? Actually, it's operations of the board. That's you, Rick.
So for operations, and it's highlighted in the agenda, on Friday, June 20th, we had a partial outage at 3411 Fort Fremont, which is also known as the Volcano House. And staff arrived, discovered there was a problem with one of the two direct bury lines. There's actually 3 lines in the house. There's 2 hot lines and a neutral line. One of the hot lines had faulted out. We investigated the area and couldn't determine which side or where the fault was exactly, so staff's direction was to dig a new trench to the home and provide power. Luckily, the home did have power throughout this period, which lasted until July 2nd to completion. And we were able to run new conduit and new line to the home and bring back the power. Notice that there is an asphalt cut across the road, as well as some re-vegging that'll need to be done in the future, and we'll address those needs as we go along. Also, for operations, the water meter update, and I've lost count how many times we've been alerted of issues with the water leaks, and it's a great program, and thank you, Bob, for all the work and the board that goes to it. It was fun yesterday afternoon. I walked by the administrative office, and both Kathy and Amy are rattling back and forth. What about this? What about this? Do you see this? Do you see this? And they're catching and discovering leaks that we probably never would have known about. So
we found 3 leaks yesterday.
Just yesterday.
2 were toilets and another was an irrigation. One was shut off till the owner could get up here, and the other ones were resolved by building maintenance. It's just 3 yesterday. There was 2 before that, I think I mentioned to you. So there's 5 in the first week of August, all leaks.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
And talk about saving the resource of our precious resource of water. But so far, 745 remote meters have been installed, and we've got about 100 left. And with 30 of those in the base camp area, the HOA for base camp, as well as the property management companies, in the process of going back through each meter vault pit area at base camp to correct some old problems where the meter pits were covered in dirt, insulation, and who knows what. They're going to resurrect those meter pits, and so as they move along, we'll install the remote meters. And then some of the other meters that are still out there are meters that are located in their homes, which are a little bit difficult to get to for access. We have to coordinate with the property owner on how to get in and make that change. And then on the final punch list, there are a lot of irrigation meters that we're just going to go back and take care of. But the bulk of it's been done, and it's been going very well. Also in the board's packet is the notice of violation response, which is on pages 154 and 155. As you remember, Vail Resort came to us and asked us about possibly painting these parking lots out here where our absorption beds are kept. And in correspondence with the state about that, which is highlighted in Matt Wheeler's letter to the state, number 3, basically saying, hey, you know, we were asking the question for a third party, and what had happened was that the state, in reviewing the response to the question, realized that our numbering was wrong. They thought we were actually discharging somewhere else out of our permitted area. It's not the case. So Matt Wheeler did an excellent job drafting up a letter of response to the state to reflect that, you know, our numbering is the same as theirs, and we'll correct our numbering in-house just to reflect the state's records. In the course of all this, and something that's been previously discussed at some board meetings, is one of our state requirements is to monitor the influent flow into the wastewater treatment plant. And within the last month, the district has installed a mag meter at the wastewater treatment plant. So now we are actually tracking the water, which is really consistent with what we're going in the plant with the water going out of the plant. In a fundamental way, it's been a success, and we appreciate the board's direction on having that done. So that concludes my report on that subject matter, unless there's any questions from the board on the notice of violation. Okay. For volcano upgrades, as you're aware, or some of you may be aware of, Volcano sent a letter out to the homeowners in the beginning of July, reflecting that they were going to install new fiber to homes, or FTTH upgrades to the system, which delivers telephone, internet, digital TV services. And the old system, which was a twisted pair of copper wires, was going to get replaced with a single fiber optics infrastructure. And so in the course of this upgrade, it impacts the district significantly because each home, each area has to be USA, which involves electric, propane staff, as well as water and sewer. So a lot of staff time has been dedicated to getting out ahead of Volcano and basically surveying the properties so they could do the work, along with coordinating, you know, where our things are compared to their things. This is in phase 1 of the project right now, and it'll continue through this fall. And you'll probably see at least 2, if not 3 crews from Volcano going through the Crypto Valley area. Currently the work's being done on Columbine Circle and East Meadows, and then they'll continue this as well as bounce back over to the west side and do more work until the snow flies, and then they'll come back in early spring to finalize the project. But district staff's been working closely with Volcano, and actually they came over to help us with a little bit with phase 2 with pulling some wires. So we hope and continue. We hope that we can have a good working relationship with Volcano and good communication and discover problems, what they find in our operations as well as back and forth. And so just so you're aware that Volcano is in the valley to these upgrades. And that concludes my report. Other than I'd like to mention that we do have our 34th annual Kirkwood 10K, which is coming up on August 30th. Again, the race will start like it has in the past at 9 a.m. And we are working with Tahoe Mountain Monitors to present this annual run, fundraising event. And so I encourage everybody to come out and go for a run.
2 questions, Rick. One, the water meter project, when do you think that'll be 100% complete?
I'd like to say it's going to get completed by the end of this year, but the wild card there is contacting homeowners and getting underneath some of these homes to finish the work.
Okay.
We have all the equipment, we have the software, we have everything that we need to do the work. It's just going to be a challenge to gain access to some of these units.
Okay. And secondly, I thought I read the Volcano letter to say they were running conduit and fiber to the curb, and they painted a lot of the roads and done some curb work. But I also, and that next year they'd be doing the conduit to the home. But I showed up here and found conduit to my home. Are they running the conduit to the home this year?
They discovered, they originally thought it was more, but they discovered some of the homes did not have conduit when it was originally installed.
Okay.
And we had a request to chase down the run between the curb and the structure of the home itself, the residence. the utilities to see, do we know what the conduit is, or should we install it? So long story short, it ended up being 3 residences that did not have conduit that they actually ran conduit for and then pulled wire for that. I think that's it. So we're working with them to figure out if there's any more, how much of an impact that will be for the district, because it's on private property, it's not public land or in an easement. And so you probably were one of the homes that needed it. And they should have contacted you first and advised you, hey, oh, by the way, this is a service that we want to provide on your property, and this is what we're doing. So,
Did they bury it?
Yeah, I have to take a quicker look, but I just sort of found this big gray pipe come up, and
Okay.
it's open, there's no, snow's hopefully gonna go into it. And there's a line, buried, so there's a line from the curb to the house. But I guarantee there's more than 3 houses that don't have a conduit. Like, I bet you don't have conduit, but
No, actually I do, because I had to replace my water line about 15 years ago. So at that time I put a bunch of stuff in the ditch.
anything else on operations report from either the board or the surviving members of the audience? Thank you.
How about electric and propane systems?
Yeah, I'll be brief on this report. Power Secure has arranged for the replacement of generator number 7. It's going to start on August 18th, and it'll be done by Holt. So I'm very confident in the replacement of number 7. They've come up with an excellent way of doing it, and so we're excited about getting that. We're into the mindset of getting the powerhouse 100% ready to go for this winter, no matter what happens to the valleys. So protect our investment. They also hopefully will be contracted with by Power Secure to do the maintenance work on the Volvos, which were identified in their pre-warranty expiration inspection. Other good news, on August 1st, Horizon Air Measurements performed the retest of stack number 2, and we passed all of our emissions tests. So congratulations to Brandy and crew. We have successfully managed our emissions for another year. We have started discussions with the Great Basin Unified Air District on what exactly our testing requirements are going to be when we go into standby mode, which will hopefully be much less expensive than they are currently. Lastly, Kiva installed the 4 new regulators at the propane vaporizer. I took this is the water bath vaporizers, and those are the picture of the regulators. If you want to see this exciting project, just head over to the vaporizer shack after the meeting, and you can see how great these look. So that gives us redundancy in a propane system, and it's a great project. And unless there's questions, that concludes my electrical opinion.
There was one question, which was, there's an analysis of moving the meters for Chair 4 and a few others, and I'm assuming, given the cost, that that's not a cost-effective project. Is that?
It's one of the things I skipped over. So yeah, one of the to-do items was to look at the meter relocation. We do have a budget of $50,000 to move meters around. So we asked Exponential to do a quick analysis of the cost. It came out to be $144 for the 3 areas that needed to be addressed. We don't know what exactly the potential savings would be, but I guarantee you it's not going to be cost effective.
Any other questions, comments, propane, electricity? How about administrative report?
That's me as well. I'll be brief. Performance reporting is in your packet. 3 comments on that. District staff has begun working on identifying electrical line loss locations. We have identified that the step-down transformers have not been calculated in the past. They have a tremendous amount of voltage that we were unaware of, and we have identified them as part of our line loss. These are stepped down. Remember, the generators produce at 480, and then, or these are step-up transformers rather than step-down, so we reduce it 480, and they get stepped up to 12,470, which is our distribution. These will be turned off in November, so we should be seeing a savings. Hopefully that'll be reflected in these numbers. And also, as I mentioned earlier, we're starting our collection system investigation that should help our inflow and infiltration percentages. Last month, I think it entered in at 17%. For the year, it was more like in 30%. So we're trying to identify that. And also, as a goal, at the next round of performance reporting, we hope to have a column that actually has a goal for each of these percentages that we keep on reporting on. Much like we had a goal of 14 kilowatts per hour per gallon for the electric previously, so that we have something that we can march towards. Great. Moving on to the June financials, I'll go straight. One of the comments was about total operating cash. Why was there $2.2 million of cash, less cash on June 30th than was budgeted for? This is a timing issue of out valley expenses that were paid in June as of June 30th, but the transfer from the reserve cash wasn't made in time to make the books. So it's just a timing issue between the two. Moving on to the income statement. Overall for the year, we didn't make $500,000 that we had budgeted to make. So it was a dry year due to the drought and business volumes. We dropped, but I'm pleased to say that not all of that dropped down to the bottom line. That we were able to save money in operations and minimize the loss. Overall, with property taxes and considered, we lost $135,000. $36,000 was the budget for a negative variance of $98,000. Some of the heroes of the year was because of the board's smart action during the year. The water department actually lost $64,000. We budgeted to lose $170,000. And by the way, as far as depreciation, was $120,000, so we funded half of our depreciation in the water department. So I think that water did extremely well due to the consumption chart. Wastewater, we were in a 3-year program of increasing rates there. It lost $471,000. It was anticipated to lose $566,000. Once again, we funded a portion of our $359,000 depreciation. Electricity, I think that as mentioned, we put forth all of our property taxes to electricity. We did meet the tier ratios. It shows a positive $500,000 gain compared to a $22,000 gain. But once again, that was with $800,000 with property taxes infused. Snow removal matched plan, and we were able to give back to the community $40,000 in contracts, and we actually show a positive variance of $8,400, but that's before we reimburse the departments for their portion of that refund. And propane showed $143,000 positive. That's down $32,000 from plan, but given the warm January, I think propane did quite well. And we actually decreased rates for propane as of July 1st. So unless there's any questions, that would be two financials.
Any questions?
No, I mean, I saw that $900,000 in operating funds, and what happened here, but you answered that right away.
Because I asked the same question. Committee reports, communications.
I think we've covered everything.
Planning, Bob Eddy?
Wanted to briefly touch on self-assessment. Nick Yvette, when she joined our committee, rightly pointed out that the charter says we should self-assess once a year, so we did that. in our last session. To summarize that very briefly, I would find the committee to be doing a very good job, with the highlights being the strong team that we have in place, great community members, substantially engaged. So that's a big part of it. Completed key objectives such as the long-term Valley Resource Plan, the Mello-Roos restructuring, and employee housing fee implemented. And we're looking for other things to make a difference in the valley, of course, perfecting Kirkwood's water rights and working on the Meadow Trail project would be examples of that. Improvement areas, I'd say the Mello-Roos thing took way too long, so certainly could have done better on that. And chairmanship's obviously a bit weak, but that guy's trying to up his game, so we'll see what we can do for the coming year.
That was the consensus of the committee, by the way.
So along those lines, Michael, are we supposed to, are you encouraging each committee to do a self-assessment?
Yeah, it'll be on the agendas for each committee as we go forward.
Finance?
Well, the main issue is really the cash management going forward, completing the audit. The auditors will be here week after next. And then doing an assessment of our IT systems and looking at ways of strengthening the operations there.
And operations, Kathy?
I think we covered everything, that'd be all right.
Personnel, I guess the only thing is that we had a closed session on the board, which doesn't count as personnel, the July 6th meeting, I think it was the 6th. And then we have an upcoming meeting before the board meeting, the week before the Labor Day board meeting. General discussion, opportunity for board members to ask questions for clarification, provide information to staff, committee updates, request staff to report back on a matter, or direct staff to place a matter on a subsequent agenda.
I have one item. You may remember I proposed that we consider an additional electric fee having to do with new properties connecting to our completed Out Valley project. I've refined my thinking about that. I've had conversations with Bob Epstein as the one board member I can talk to, with Alan Sapp and with Mark Duvall and with Michael. I'm confident now that the idea at least has some merit, and what I would ask is that the Finance Committee now take this up with the goal of coming to some conclusion prior to the end of this fiscal year, so that if we want to do something, it would be effective in the new fiscal year.
Sounds like we should put it on the agenda for the Finance Committee to consider.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any others?
The only one I just want to briefly mention, my family had the opportunity to use the emergency services here at Kirkwood, and to a happy result. And I'm very appreciative of Rick for the service he provides to the community.
Great. I wonder, and this is just a question, Michael, I think you need to organize another field trip like a hole in the head, but I'd be interested in seeing our completed project down there. Maybe it's a matter of just board members and interested members of the community driving in.
Well, it's an excellent, I appreciate you mentioning this, and I already invited Peter. I'll actually be doing a site inspection on Wednesday, so if any board member would like to
This Wednesday?
This Wednesday at noon. If any board member would like to attend, I know it's midweek, but I would certainly be happy to do it then. Or if there's a subsequent weekend that you're up, I can go individually down there. So instead of doing a field trip, possibly we could do this individually until we do maybe an end of the project field trip. But if there's any interest on the weekend or Wednesdays at noon is when I usually go down, you're more than invited.
Maybe I'll go down with you this Wednesday.
That'd be great.
So, completed project though, do you think we should have a field trip at that point, or maybe just maps for people to get there?
I think that one of our tours should be done by the board, just to let them know exactly what we're going through, so that would be interesting. But, yeah, I think a completed project field trip at some point, whether it be next spring or in the fall or whatever, is a good idea. welcome your participation.
Great.
Standish,
Yes.
can I ask a question?
Sure.
I probably should have asked it when Bob was presenting the finance committee report. Just a general question.
Can't hear.
Sorry. So it's Nancy again. So I had a question for Bob for the finance
Yeah.
committee. And the question is, is there an anticipation that you're going to get a clean audit this year? And has there been anything that because you did form a not-for-profit this year?
Well, I think this will be an easier year than most to audit because the system's been in place for over a year. And we did switch auditors, so I would hope they would find some items, but I'm not expecting anything major, but the minor stuff matters too. So, yeah.
So, yes, just to go along with this, I would expect that next year will be a very clean audit because we'll have the same auditor for like 2 years. This year could be a little bumpy with the new auditor. It's typically my experience to get a new auditor.
It's their job to find stuff. It's our job to leave little crumbs. They're not too big. So I would expect it would go smoothly, and it has been so far.
I mean, I would expect a clean audit once we get through finding the crumbs. And then the nonprofit, did we form a nonprofit or did we just get a 501c3 number?
501c3.
Number. And do we have that now? Is it operational?
I don't believe, I think the IRS, we're waiting for the letter from IRS, but we are functional.
Okay.
501c3.
Yeah.
But I guess I wouldn't be surprised if your auditor picks that up.
Yeah. Well, I think that our auditor's been picking things up. They had us write off in the consent calendar 3 pro forma invoices, so they're on their job.
Yeah.
They seem pretty confident to me.
Yeah, they're really good.
Oh, good. Any other questions or comments? Then we'll adjourn the meeting.
Bob here. If I could burn a couple more minutes on the Meadow Trail system, I apologize, but I did drop off and I was probably in the middle of spouting off something about it. This thing, you said, Stanis, you had a discussion with Linda Draculich and that her statement was she did want the trail moved off her property. Is that
Yeah.
what I heard?
Yeah. She wasn't uptight
Yeah,
about it at
so
all.
I just want everybody to be, sorry?
She was not uptight about it at all. I said, I understand the trail goes across your property and that you
Yeah.
had some concerns about it. She said, it always has gone across my property. It always has been an issue. And we look forward to potential ways of resolving it. And she said somebody was coming to visit her, which I thought was you. And I pointed out that you couldn't
Yeah,
travel
is
down.
Peter still in the,
No, he's gone.
sorry, Peter's still in the room?
No, he's
Okay.
gone.
So everybody here should be clear, there's a pretty decent trail down the east side of the valley now, and we're trying to, to do something to try to nudge that forward so it becomes a more complete system. If the Draculich folks don't want to have the trail go across their property, I think we're basically screwed. Because it's, there just is no feet way for the thing to be rerouted where it is on Oxbow of the stream there, and we're going to take a big step back, my view, in terms of usability of the meadow for residents, at least in our neck of the woods. So I think it's a pretty serious thing, and I will certainly canvass Peter yet again to try to get him to see what he can do in terms of resolving this without the trail being moved off of their property. But if that happens, I think we're all going to not like the result.
Well, let me back up and say I don't want to put words in Linda's mouth, even though that's what she said. And I'd encourage you and or Peter to talk to her directly.
They were promised a bridge.
Yeah, we'll do.
They were promised a bridge
Tim.
by Tim, yeah. Sounds about right. Big bridge.
Promised a bridge.
Yeah,
Wow.
by Tim Coey.
I remember them being offered ski tickets or something. I'd never heard about no bridge, but okay.
The ski tickets last till the bridge is built.
Cheryl says the ski tickets last till the bridge is built. So they may have ski tickets
got
for
it.
a while. Meeting adjourned? Oh, I'm sorry, Bob, is there anything else you wanted to say on the Meadow Trail stuff?
No, sir. Thank you for indulging me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bob.
It's short, right? Just kind of, well, there's a lot of items.